Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a trip back in time. To a place that might feel strangely familiar yet deeply unsettling 20th century Ireland. We're stepping into a world where the rules are unwritten, the judgment is swift, and the line between piety and punishment is terrifyingly thin. It's a world where a woman's life could be derailed not by a crime, but by a rumor, a glance, or simply by being a little too full of life. Frankly, with our modern sensibilities, you'd probably be in trouble before the first day is over. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop me a line in the comments. Let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air in the parish hall is thick with the scent of peat smoke, damp wool, and the sweet, slightly dusty smell of wooden floorboards that have seen 1,000 dances. Lamplight flickers, casting long, dancing shadows that make a small space feel both intimate and vast. A fiddle and a bodhran, that uniquely Irish drum-dot rhythm that works its way into your bones. A cheerful, insistent beat that makes it impossible to stand still. This is the heart of the community. The one place where the relentless cycle of work and prayer is allowed to pause for a few precious hours. You're here, caught in the swirl of it all. Your cheeks are flushed, partly from the warmth of the crowded room, partly from the exertion of the chilly dance. The rust-spun fabric of your dress feels a little scratchy, but you barely notice. You're here laughing, your head thrown back, as your partner swings you around. For a moment, you are nothing but youth and music and motion. It feels like freedom, but it's not really. Along the walls, seated on hard wooden chairs, are the chaperones, the mothers, the aunts, and over in the corner, with an air of quiet authority that needs no announcement, is the parish priest. Their eyes are not idle. They are scanning the room, their gazes lingering here and there. They aren't watching for trouble in the way you might think a fist fight, or someone who's had a drop too much. No, they are watching for something far more subtle. They are watching you. They see the way you laugh, a little too loudly perhaps. They see the way your hand rests for a second longer than necessary on your dance partner's arm. They see the brightness in your eyes, the easy confidence in your smile as you chat with the young man who brought you a cup of water. In your mind, these are innocent moments of joy. In their minds, they are data points, evidence. This is the central, unshakable pillar of the world you inhabit, the immense social and moral authority of the Catholic Church, intertwined with the very fabric of the state. The priest's opinion isn't just an opinion, it carries the weight of judgment, both in this life and the next. His quiet disapproval can follow you out of this hall and into every part of your life. It's a mainstream historical fact that in post-independence Ireland, the Church's influence was so profound that its moral code effectively became the social law of the land, particularly for women. As the music swells again, you're drawn back into the dance. You don't notice the whispered conversation between your aunt and another woman, their heads bent together, their eyes flicking towards you. You don't see the priest's slight, almost imperceptible frown. You're just living. Here's a little tidbit for you: these dances themselves were a subject of intense official scrutiny. The government had passed something called the Public Dance Halls Act back in 1935, which essentially gave the clergy and the courts the power to police these events. The goal was to stamp out what they saw as the moral dangers of unsupervised dancing, the so-called jazz music, and the potential for immoral behavior. So the very space you're in, this little pocket of supposed freedom, is actually a highly regulated and observed environment. By stage, you step outside for a breath of cool night air. The young man from earlier follows you out. He tells you a clumsy joke, and you laugh. He says your hair shines in the moonlight. You feel a blush creep up your neck. A pleasant, fluttering warmth. It's a compliment, nothing more. But from the darkened doorway of the hall, it does seem, It is noted, it is interpreted. Historians still debate the exact mechanism that triggered a girl's committal to a place like a Magdalene Laundry. There were rarely formal trials or legal proceedings. Was it a direct denunciation from a priest? Was it a panicked family, terrified of social ruin from a daughter they deemed too willful or flirtatious? Or was it sometimes as simple and as horrifying as gossip, a neighbor's malicious whisper reaching the wrong ear? The records are so often incomplete or deliberately obscured that the true, specific reason for any one girl's fate is often lost to history, leaving a chilling void where justice should be. The dance ends. You walk home under a sky full of stars. The melody of the last song still playing in your head. You feel a happy exhaustion, the pleasant ache in your muscles a reminder of the fun you had. You slip into your bed. The cool sheets a welcome relief, and drift off to sleep, replaying the smiles, the music, the stolen compliment under the moon. You are completely, blissfully, unaware that your fate has just been sealed. The morning sun filters through the thin curtains of your bedroom, painting stripes of light across the floor. You wake slowly, a pleasant ache in your limbs, a faint echo of last night's dancing. The house is filled with the comforting, ordinary sounds of a new day, the clink of a spoon against a teacup downstairs, the low murmur of the radio, the smell of toast and strong tea. It's a cocoon of familiarity, a world that feels safe and predictable. You stretch, smiling to yourself as a snatch of fiddle music plays in your memory. The feeling of that happy exhaustion lingers, the warm and private treasure. That is, until the knock comes. It's not a friendly rap, not the sound of a neighbor dropping by. It's a solid, solemn, measured sound. 3 distinct knocks on the front door that seem to silence the house. The radio is turned down. The clinking stops. You hear your mother's footsteps, quicker and lighter than usual, and the sound of the door latch lifting, a man's voice, low and calm, and your mother's reply, suddenly deferential and strained. Curiosity pulls you from your bed. You creep to the top of the stairs, peering down through the banisters, and your stomach tightens. Standing in the small entryway, his tall frame seeming to shrink the space, is the parish priest, Father Michael. He still wears his long black cassock, and he holds his hat in his hands. The light from the open door catches the silver cross hanging from his neck. He isn't smiling. It's just a pastoral visit, Mrs. O'Malley, she is saying, but his eyes are scanning the room, his gaze resting on the small, homey details as if he is taking inventory, just to see how the family is keeping. Your mother ushers him into the sitting room. The good room, the one reserved for important guests. She's flustered, smoothing her apron, offering him tea, her voice a pitch higher than normal. You're told to come down and greet him. As you enter the room, his eyes land on you, and they are not unkind. Not exactly. They are evaluated, like a farmer inspecting livestock. "Ah, there she is," he says, a thin smile touching his lips. "I saw you at the chili last night. You seem to have enjoyed yourself." The words are innocent, but the tone is not. It's a question disguised as a statement. You murmur a reply, something about the music being lively. You feel a blush rising, but this time it's not a pleasant warmth. It's hot and uncomfortable. "Yes," he continues, taking the tea your mother offers. "It's important that young people have wholesome recreation. But one must always be mindful of propriety, of the example one sets." He looks at you directly now. You were speaking with young Thomas Ryan, outside. The air goes still. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. This is where you come face to face with the immense, almost absolute power of the clergy in the daily life of 20th century Ireland. This wasn't just about Sunday Mass. The priest was the community's moral compass, its judge, and often its jury. His opinion could influence who got a job, who was considered a suitable match for marriage, and whose family was held in good standing. To defy him, or even to be the subject of his disapproval, was to risk social isolation. Afraid that, in a small, tight-knit village, was a kind of death in itself. Families lived in terror of this, of the shame that could be brought upon their name by a single misstep. You tried to explain. He was just telling me a joke. Father, it was only for a moment. Your voice sounds small, childish. The priest takes a slow sip of his tea. He doesn't look at your mother, but you can feel her anxiety radiating across the room. She is silent, wringing her hands in her apron. She is not coming to your defense. It's not the moments themselves that are the danger, he says, his voice patient, as if explaining a complex theological point to a simpleton. It is the occasion of sin. Here's a chillingly specific piece of theology that became a to love social control, the idea that a good Catholic must avoid not just sinful acts, but any person, place, or situation that could lead to temptation. A girl's beauty could be an occasion of sin. A private conversation could be an occasion of sin. Your laughter, your bright eyes, your simple, unguarded youthfulness, they were not marks of your personality. They were potential liabilities, spiritual hazards that needed to be managed. He places his cup back on the saucer with a soft click. You have a vivacious spirit, a certain lack of modesty. It draws the eye, and to the young woman. That can be a dangerous thing. It can lead you, and others, into temptation. Every word lands like a stone. He is taking your very essence, the things that make you you, and recasting them as flaws, as moral defects. The final verdict is delivered with that same calm, dispassionate authority. I have spoken with your parents. We are all in agreement. It would be best for you to spend some time in a place where you can be guided, where you can pray and reflect, and learn the virtues of humility and quiet work, to protect your immortal soul. He doesn't name the place. He doesn't have to. You look at your mother. Her face is pale, her eyes fixed on the floor. Is she a willing participant in this, a betrayer, or is she a victim? Do historians still fiercely debate the role of families in these committaless? Were they cold-hearted pragmatists, sacrificing a difficult daughter to preserve the family's reputation and the marriage prospects of their other children, or were they themselves so thoroughly indoctrinated, so terrified of both divine damnation and social ruin, that they genuinely believed they were acting in their child's best interest? Looking at your mother's stricken face, you realize the answer is likely a tangled, heartbreaking mix of both, a truth so complicated it offers no comfort at all. The priest stands up to leave. He pats your shoulder, a gesture that is meant to be paternal but feels like a brand. It is for the best. He says, God's work will be done. Then he is gone. The heavy silence he leaves behind is worse than his words. The sun is still shining outside. The world is still going on. But in your small sitting room, the curtains have been drawn on your life as you knew it. You are no longer a daughter. You are a problem. A soul to be saved. A body to be confined. The next 48 hours pass in a surreal, suffocating haze. The normal rhythms of the house are gone, replaced by a strained and heavy silence. Conversations happen in whispers behind closed doors. Your father, a man you've always known to be full of loud opinions and laughter, barely looks at you. When he does, his eyes are a confusing mix of anger and something that looks like grief. Your mother moves through her chores with a brittle efficiency, her face a mask. She packs a small bag for you. Simple, practical things. A spare dress, a hairdress, a prayer book. There are no keepsakes, no photographs. It's a bag for a journey, but not a homecoming. You try to ask questions. Where am I going for how long? The answers are vague, evasive. It's a good place. Your mother says, not meeting your eye as she folds one of your blouses. The sisters are good women. They'll take care of you. You just need some time to settle yourself. But I've done nothing wrong. The protest bursts out of you, hot with indignation and fear. Your father's voice, when it comes, is rough. You'll do as you're told. It's been decided. It's for your own good. The phrase echoes the priest's parting words, a chilling chorus that seals your fate, for your own good. It's a phrase that strips you of your own voice, your own judgment. It implies that you are incapable of knowing what is good for you, that your life is a thing to be managed by others. The morning comes, grey and damp. The car is waiting. It's not the family's usual mode of transport, it's a dark, unremarkable vehicle that seems to absorb the morning light. A man you don't know is driving. Your father puts your small bag in the back. Your mother hugs you. A quick, stiff embrace that feels more like a push than a comfort. Be a good girl, she whispers, her voice thick. It's the last thing she says to you. You get into the back of the car. The seat is cool and unfamiliar. Your father stands on the doorstep next to your mother. They look small and distant, like figures in a photograph. As the car pulls away, you press your face against the window, watching them shrink, watching the familiar lane, the stone walls, the fields of your childhood, all slipping away. You don't wave. They don't wave back. This is the moment of ultimate betrayal. A primal wound that will never fully heal. It is the family, the very unit that is supposed to be your sanctuary, delivering you into captivity, while the priest may have been the catalyst. It is your own parents who drive you to the gate. This collaboration between family and institution is a cornerstone of how the Magdalene system functioned. The Laundries couldn't have existed without a steady supply of girls, and that supply came from families convinced, coerced, or shamed into handing over their daughters. The shame was the engine of it all, the shame of a perceived transgression, the shame of public judgment, the shame of not conforming. It was a poison that turned parents against their own children. The journey is long and silent. The driver doesn't speak. You sit in the back, the world you know receding behind you, replaced by an unfamiliar landscape of roads and towns that have no meaning to you. The silence in the car is a physical presence. It's a void where you want to scream, to cry, to demand answers, but you do nothing. A strange numbness has settled over you, a protective shell. Here's a small, bleak detail about these journeys. In some survivor testimonies, women recall being given a sweet cup of tea or a small cake by their parents just before they left. It was presented as a treat, a final act of kindness, but it was often laced with a sedative, a little something to make the girl drowsy and compliant, to prevent any scenes or attempts to run during the drive. A final, gentle act of coercion to ensure the smooth transfer of a human being from one form of control to another. You don't know if your tea this morning had anything in it, but a heavy lethargy weighs on your limbs. You watch the green countryside slide by, the blur of trees and stone fences. Each mile is taking you further from everything you are. You try to fix the details of your home in your mind, the crack in your bedroom ceiling, the specific scent of your mother's baking, the sound of your father's laugh clinging to them like talismans. You don't know it yet, but these memories are about to become your most precious and most painful possessions. The car turns off the main road, onto an narrower, tree-lined avenue. The light becomes dappled and dim. You feel a lurch in your stomach. This feels different, secluded, hidden. Historians are still trying to map the full network of these institutions and the routes used to supply them. It wasn't just the well-known, city-based laundries. There was a web of smaller convent, mother and baby homes, and industrial schools that were all part of this system of social control. The journey you are on was taken by tens of thousands of women over more than a century. The exact path may have differed, but the destination was always the same: a place of confinement, hidden from public view, where life could be quietly erased. Was the driver an employee of the laundry, a man from the parish hired for the task, or a relative, grimly performing his duty? The anonymity of the process was part of its terror. The car snows through the trees. You see it. A high stone wall, topped with a cruel sparkle of broken glass cemented into the top. It looks like a prism, and rising behind it, the grey slate roof of a large, foreboding building. The car comes to a stop before a set of immense, solid wooden gates. There is no name, no sign, just the impenetrable wall and the silent, imposing gates. The driver gets out, pulls a chain, and a bell tolls somewhere deep inside the walls. The sound is dull and final. This is it. This is the place your parents sent you to be taken care of. The place the priest said would save your soul. As you sit there, frozen in the back of the car, you have the sudden, terrifying realization that they were not sending you to something. They were sending you away. There's a grinding sound, a heavy bolt being drawn back from the other side. The massive gates swing inward, just enough for the car to pass through, moving with a slowness that feels deliberate, ceremonial. They close behind you with a deep, resonant thud that seems to vibrate in your chest. The sound echoes off the stone walls, a definitive, irreversible period at the end of a sentence. The world outside is gone, the muffled sounds of the distant road, the sight of the open sky all cut off. You are now inside. The car pulls up a short, gravelly drive and stops before a severe, three-story building made of dark, weathered stone. Its windows are tall and narrow, like accusatory eyes staring down at you. There are no curtains, no flowers, no sign of warmth or life. It exudes an air of cold, disciplined piety. The official name for a place like this was a Magdalene asylum, or a home for penitent women. The name itself is a judgment. It's rooted in the biblical figure of Mary Magdalene, who, for centuries, was traditionally and some scholars now say mistakenly portrayed as a repentant prostitute. So before you even step out of the car, you have been labeled. You are a fallen woman. You are here to do penance. The driver gets out, takes your small bag, and leaves it on the gravel. He doesn't say a word to you. He gets back in the car, totters back to the gate, which opens just enough for him to exit, and then closes again with that same soul-crushing finality. You are left standing alone in the driveway, your small bag at your feet. The front door of the building opens. A woman stands silhouetted in the doorway. She is dressed head to toe in black, a severe, floor-length habit, with a stiff white W imple framing a face that is pale and emotional. She is a nun. She looks at you, her expression unreadable, and gestures for you to come inside. You pick up your bag and walk towards her, each step on the gravel sounding an Evingrum loud in the silence. As you cross the threshold, the air changes. The cool, damp air of the outside is replaced by an indoor smell, a mix of beeswax, boiled cabbage, and a sharp, antiseptic odor you can't quite place. The door closes behind you. You are now in the heart of the institution. The entrance hall is vast, cold, and echoing. The floor is made of polished stone tiles, and the ceilings are so high that your footsteps seem to bounce back at you from the darkness above. The walls are bare, save for a large, dark crucifix. A statue of the Virgin Mary stands in one corner, her painted eyes looking down with an expression of sorrowful piety. Everything is obsessively clean, orderly, and silent. It is the silence of a place where noise is forbidden. Come this way, the nun says. Her voice is low and devoid of inflection. She doesn't introduce herself. She doesn't ask your name. She is simply a figure of authority, a cog in the machine that is now processing you. She leads you down a long, dim corridor. The only light comes from the tall windows, but it seems to get swallowed by the dark wooden stone. You pass glazed doors. Behind them, you hear nothing. It's as if the building is deserted, yet you have the unsettling feeling of being watched. The nun stops at a heavy wooden door and unlocks it with a large iron key that hangs from a chain at her waist. She opens it and gestures for you to enter a small, bare room. It contains a simple wooden chair, a small table, and nothing else. Wait here, she says, and closes the door, locking it from the outside. You are alone in the sterile room, the sound of the key turning in the lock confirming your imprisonment. This is the beginning of the process of erasure, the initial phase in any total institution, a term coined by sociologist Irving Goffman to describe a place of residence and where a large number of like-situated individuals cut off from the wider society for an appreciable period of time, together lead an enclosed, formally administered round of life. Prisons, mental asylums, and convents all fit this model. The first step is always to sever the individual's ties to their former life. Here's a small, peculiar detail about the architecture of these places. Many of the laundries were designed with a specific, disorienting layout. Corridors would often look identical, doors were unmarked, and the path from one part of the building, like the dormitory, to another, like the laundry or chapel, was often deliberately long and circuitous. It was a form of psychological control, ensuring that new arrivals quickly became lost and entirely dependent on the established routine and the guidance of the nuns. You couldn't run if you didn't even know how to find the front door. Use it on the hard chair. Your hands clenched in your lap. The silence presses in on you. You try to hold on to the anger, the indignation you felt earlier, but beginning to dissolve into a cold, creeping fear. Who are these people? What do they want from you? How long is sometimes days, weeks? The questions circle in your mind. But there are no answers. Only the oppressive silence and the smell of boiled cabbage. Historians and sociologists are still debating the motivations of the religious orders who ran these institutions. Were the nuns cruel, sadistic individuals who enjoyed their power, or were they themselves products of the same rigid, unforgiving system? Believing they were performing a necessary, albeit harsh, spiritual duty, many were young women who entered the convent with a genuine vocation, only to be placed in a position of absolute authority over other women, in a system designed to crush individuality. It raises a difficult question: can a person be both a victim of a system and a perpetrator of its cruelties? The truth is likely uncomfortably grey. After what feels like an eternity, the key turns in the lock again. The door opens. It's the same nun. She is holding a bundle of coarse, grey fabric. She places it on the table. "Take off your clothes," she says, her voice flat. "All of them." The command hangs in the sterile air of the small room, stark and absolute. Take off your clothes. All of them. There's no room for negotiation, no space for modesty. Your hesitation is met with a cold, impatient stare from the nun. It's your first real test of obedience, and failure is not an option. Slowly, your fingers fumbling with the buttons, you begin to undress. The dress you wore from home, the one your mother chose for you, falls to the floor. Each layer of clothing you remove feels like shedding a layer of yourself. Your slip, your stockings, your undergarments, they are the last tangible links to your life outside these walls. To the person you were just this morning, you stand before her, completely exposed, the cold of the stone floor seeping into your feet. The humiliation is a physical thing, a hot flush that spreads across your skin. The nun gathers your clothes from the floor with an air of distaste, as if they are contaminated. She doesn't fold them. She bundles them up, along with the contents of your small bag, the spare dress, the hairtress. She takes everything. There will be no personal possessions here. Nothing to remind you of who you used to be. This is a core tenet of institutionalization, the stripping of personal identity to facilitate the creation of a new, compliant one. Your clothes, your hairstyle, your small trinkets, they are all expressions of self, and the self is what they have to break. She pushes the bundle of grey fabric towards you. It's a uniform, a shapeless, rough spun dress, the color of ash. It's designed to conceal, not to flatter, to erase any trace of individuality or femininity. Beneath it are coarse, functional undergarments. The fabric is scratchy and stiff against your skin. It smells faintly of the same sharp, chemical odor you noticed in the hall. "Put these on," she commands. As you dress in these strange, grim clothes, you feel yourself disappearing. You are no longer the girl from the dance, the daughter, the individual. You are becoming an inmate. Next, she turns her attention to your hair. She produces a pair of shears. The metallic glint of the blades in the dim light makes your stomach clench. "Sit," she says, pointing to the chair. You obey, a cold dread washing over you. The sound of the shears opening and closing next to your ear is terrifyingly loud. She grabs a handful of your hair, the hair that the boy at the dance had shown in the moonlight, and with a few rough, efficient snips, it's gone. It falls to the floor around you in soft, lifeless clumps. She is not a hairdresser. There is no skill, no care. It's an act of shearing, like a sheep. The result is a crude, jagged cut that serves one purpose: to remove another mark of your vanity, another piece of your identity. Then comes the final, most crucial act of erasure. From this day forward, you will have a new name. The nun says, her voice flat and final. You will be known as Cecilia. You will not use your old name. You will not speak of your past. That life is over. Do you understand? Cecilia, it's a saint's name. It feels alien on your tongue, a label stitched onto a stranger. The loss of your name is the most profound violation yet. Your name is your story, your connection to your family, your very essence. It was given to you at birth. To have it taken away is to be rendered a blank slate, a non-person. This practice was nearly universal in the laundries. Girls were given new names, often the names of saints, as a constant, verbal reminder of their new status as penitents. They were no longer Mary O'Malley or Bridget Kelly. They were Agnes, or Teresa, or Cecilia. This is a powerful, historically documented method of psychological control. It's a technique called mortification of the self. By systematically stripping away everything that defines a person's identity, their appearance, their possessions, their name, the institution breaks down their resistance and molds them into a compliant member of the group. It is deliberate, and it is devastatingly effective. Your name is Cecilia. The nun repeats, her voice shrill, demanding a response. My name is Cecilia, you whisper. The words feel like a betrayal. Speak up. My name is Cecilia. You say, your voice a little stronger. The sound of it foreign and drawn in your own ears. Satisfied, she turns to leave. Before she does, she points to a small card on the table you hadn't noticed before. On it is a number. This is your number. You will learn. It will be on your laundry mark, on your place in the refectory, on your bed in the dormitory. You are Cecilia. You are number 147. A name you didn't choose. And a number. That is what you are now. Here's a small, sad piece of trivia. The personal effects taken from the women upon entry: clothes, letters, photographs were supposed to be stored. In theory, they could be reclaimed if a woman was ever released. However, in many cases, these items were simply burned or thrown away. The institution had no intention of releasing most of its inmates, so their pasts were literally discarded like rubbish. For the women inside, this meant the last tangible pieces of their history were gone forever. The nun leaves, locking the door behind her once more. You are left alone again. But you are not the same person who entered this room. You are wearing the institution's clothes. You have the institution's haircut. You have the institution's name. You look down at your hands, turning them over. They still look like your hands. For a moment, it's a small comfort, a tiny anchor to the person you still feel you are, somewhere deep inside. But you have a dreadful feeling that it won't be for long. The question of consent and complicity lingers here. Did the girls themselves, in this moment of profound shock and coercion, start to internalize the narrative? Did some part of them begin to believe they were, in fact, sinful and in need of this brutal form of correction? Historians and psychologists who have studied survivor testimonies suggest that this internalisation of guilt was a common and tragic consequence of the system. When every authority figure in your life, priest, parent, nun, tells you that you are flawed and deserving of punishment, it becomes incredibly difficult to hold on to your own sense of innocence. The line between what is being done to you and what you deserve begins to blur. And that, perhaps, is the most insidious form of control of all. The lock turns again, but this time you are not left alone. The nun gestures for you to follow. and you are led out of the small processing room and deeper into the labyrinth of the convent. The corridor opens into a vast, cavernous space, and the change in atmosphere is immediate and overwhelming. You are hit by a wall of heat and steam so thick it feels like you're breathing water. The air is heavy with the acrid stench of Lysol, bleach, and something else, the metallic, slightly sweet smell of hot irons on damp linen. The noise is a deafening, rhythmic cacophony, a percussive beat of wooden paddles against wet cloth, the grinding groan of massive, hand-cranked ringers, the hiss of steam, and the low, constant murmur of women's voices, not in conversation, but in prayer. This is the laundry, the heart of the Magdalene asylum, the engine of your penance. The room is enormous, with a floor of slick, perpetually damp flagstones and a high, vaulted ceiling where steam condenses and drips back down like a constant, miserable rain. All around you are women, dozens of them. They move with a synchronized, wary rhythm, their bodies bent over huge, steaming vats of water or standing at long wooden tables, scrubbing, wringing, and folding endless mountains of linen. They are all dressed in the same shapeless grey uniform as you. They all have the same short, functional haircut. Their faces are flushed from the heat, sick with sweat, their expressions ranging from vacant exhaustion to a kind of dull, focused concentration. They don't look up as you enter. They are gears in a machine, and your arrival is just the introduction of a new, unpolished cog. You are led to a massive stone trough filled with steaming, murky water. Piled next to it is a mountain of soiled laundry sheets, towels, tablecloths, shirts. It's a daunting, seemingly infinite task. "This is your station," Benon says, her voice cutting through the din. She hands you a heavy wooden paddle and a rough block of yellow soap. "You will wash. You will scrub until they are clean. You will not talk. You will pray." She demonstrates the motion. A brutal, back-and-forth scrubbing of a stained sheet against a ridged washboard set inside the trough. The work is physical, punishing. It requires you to put your entire body into it, leaning over the hot water, using your shoulders, your arms, your back. Within minutes, your new, scratchy uniform is damp with steam and sweat. This is the central reality of the Magdalen Laundries. They were not just convents or asylums, they were commercial, industrial-scale laundries. This is a crucial historical point. These institutions weren't just about prayer and penance, they were businesses, generating significant, untaxed income for the religious orders that ran them. They held contracts with prestigious hotels, government departments including the army and the presidential residence, wealthy private households, and other institutions. The penitents were, in reality, a captive, unpaid workforce. The narrative of saving souls was a convenient and pious justification for a highly profitable enterprise built on forced labor. You plunge your hands into the hot, caustic water. The heat is shocking at first, and the lye in the soap immediately begins to sting the soft skin of your hands. You pick up a heavy, sodden sheet and begin to scrub. It's clumsy at first. The wet linen is incredibly heavy, and the motion is awkward and strenuous. A supervising nun patrols the aisles between the washing stations, a long wooden rod in her hand. You see her tap it sharply against the side of a trough where a girl is slowing down, her head drooping with fatigue. The girl flinches and immediately picks up her pace. There is no room for rest. The rhythm must be maintained. Here's a small, grueling detail of the work. The laundry was divided into stages, and it was all done by hand in the early to mid-20th century. First came the soaking and the brutal initial scrubbing in the vat you read now, what was often called the pound. Then the items were boiled in huge copper cauldrons. After that, they were put through giant, hand-cranked mangles, or ringers, to force the water out, a dangerous job where fingers and hands could easily be crushed. Then came the drying, either outside or in massive, heated drying rooms, followed by the starching and the ironing, using heavy, solid metal irons heated on stoves. It was a relentless, 7 days a week production line of grueling physical labor. As you work, your back begins to ache, your shoulders burn, the skin on your knuckles is already red and raw. You try to mimic the movements of the women around you, the ones who have been here for years. They have a practiced, economical motion, a way of using their weight to do the work. Their bodies long since hardened and accustomed to the strain. You look at their faces. They are mostly young, but their eyes look old. You are told to recite the rosary as you work. The Hail Mary, over and over and over. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. The words become a mindless chant, a vocal anesthetic against the physical misery. The prayers are not for comfort, they are another to love control, fitting the mind, preventing independent thought, and reinforcing the rhythm of the work. Historians and economists are still trying to quantify the exact value of the labor performed in these laundries over the decades. Due to the secretive and often non-existent bookkeeping, it's an incredibly difficult task, but conservative estimates suggest that these institutions generated millions of pounds in revenue for the Catholic Church, all while operating under the guise of charity. This financial aspect is critical to understanding why the system persisted for so long. It was not just ideologically convenient, it was incredibly lucrative. The question of whether the primary motive was moral reform or financial profit is a point of ongoing and heated debate, though most modern scholarship leans heavily towards the latter. An hour passes, then another. The concept of time starts to dissolve, measured only by the growing mountain of clean, heavy linen on one side and the shrinking pile of dirty laundry on the other. Your body screams in protest. Your hands are on fire. You feel a blister forming on your palm from the rough wooden paddle. You look up for a second, catching your breath, and your eyes meet those of another girl across the trough. She's probably no older than you. For a fleeting instant, you see a flicker of something in her eyes, sympathy, recognition, before she quickly looks down, back to her work, her face becoming a blank mask once more. You learn your first unspoken lesson: do not make eye contact. Do not connect. To be noticed is to be in danger. You are alone in this, even when surrounded by others. The day bleeds into a grueling, monotonous routine, governed not by the clock, but by bells and the commands of the nuns. The transition from one state of misery to the next is abrupt and non-negotiable. A loud, clanging bell signals the end of the work period in the laundry. The sudden relative silence is jarring, replaced by the ringing in your ears and the dull throb of your entire body. You and the other women, you learn to call them the girls, regardless of their age, are herded out of the steamy laundry. You move as a group, a silent, shuffling column of grey uniforms, down the cold stone corridors. There is no talking, no lagging behind. The supervising nuns walk alongside, their presence a constant, oppressive pressure. Their eyes miss nothing. A drooping head, a whispered word, a moment of hesitation, all are noted. You are led to a large, cold room called the refectory. Long, bare wooden tables and backless benches are arranged in severe, straight lines. The room smells of boiled vegetables and disinfectant. You find your assigned spot, marked by your number 147. You stand behind the bench, hands folded, head bowed, until a nun says a long grace in Latin. Only then are you permitted to sit. A bowl of thin, watery stew and a single slice of dry bread are placed before you. This is dinner. It is bland, lukewarm, and barely enough to quell the gnawing hunger in your stomach after hours of hard labor. You eat in enforced silence. The only sounds are the scraping of spoons against bowls and the watchful footsteps of the patrolling nun. The silence is a weapon. It prevents the formation of friendships, the sharing of comfort, the plotting of resistance. It isolates each of you in your own bubble of misery, making the group feel like a collection of solitary individuals rather than a community. This enforced silence was one of the most consistently reported rules of the laundries, a key pillar of their psychological control. To speak without permission was a serious infraction, punishable by a variety of cruelties. This rule is a major theme in nearly all survivor testimonies. It wasn't just about maintaining order, it was about breaking the spirit. Human connection is a fundamental need, and by systematically denying it, the institution fostered an atmosphere of profound loneliness and paranoia. After the meager meal, you are herded to the chapel. It is grander than the rest of the building, with stained glass windows and a polished wooden altar, but it offers no comfort. It feels just as cold and imposing. Here, you kneel on hard, wooden kneel rest for what feels like hours of prayer. The Latin prayers wash over you. The words meaningless, your mind numb with exhaustion. Your knees ache on the hard wood. Your back screams in protest from the day's labor. But you must remain perfectly still. Fidgeting is a sign of an undisciplined soul. A nun paces the aisle, her rosary beads clicking softly, a sound that becomes synonymous with surveillance. The rules are absolute and everywhere. You learn them quickly through observation and correction. Rule 1: silence at all times unless spoken to by a nun, or during designated prayer. Rule 2: eyes downcast. Never look a nun directly in the eye. It is a sign of insolence. Rule 3: walk. Do not run. Move with purpose and humility. Rule 4: no personal possessions. Nothing is yours. Rule 5: absolute and immediate obedience to any instruction from a nun. The consequences for breaking these rules are swift and harsh. A sharp slap, the denial of your already meager meal, public shaming, where you are forced to stand or kneel in a corner for hours, sometimes with a sign around your neck detailing your sin. Oh, worst of all, being assigned extra, more punishing work. Here's a bizarre and cruel detail about the punishments. Some survivor accounts describe a punishment known as the circle. A girl who had broken a rule would be forced to stand in the center of the refectory while the other women, at the direction of the nuns, would walk around her, pointing and chanting about her transgression. It was a ritualized form of humiliation, using the community of inmates to enforce the institution's power and to sow division among them. It was a terrifyingly effective way to say you are not one of us. You are alone. Finally, another bell signals the end of prayers. You are led to the dormitory, a vast, cold room lined with rows of identical iron-framed beds. Each bed is narrow and has a thin, lumpy mattress, a single coarse blanket, and a small, hard pillow. There are no partitions, no privacy. You are just one body among many in the dark. Your bed is number 147. You strip down to a simple night shift, another grey, shapeless garment. In the chilling cold of the dormitory, you collapse onto the mattress, your body a symphony of aches. Every muscle protests. Your hands, which you now look at in the dim light, are red, swollen, and the skin on your knuckles is broken and bleeding. You try to curl up, to find a position that doesn't hurt, but it's impossible. Even here, in what should be a place of rest, you are not free. A nun sits on a raised platform at the end of the room, watching over the rows of beds, ensuring silence and stillness are maintained throughout the night. The question of why women didn't just collectively rebel is a common one from an outside perspective, but from inside, the reasons are painfully clear. Historians who study total institutions point to a state of learned helplessness. After repeated punishment and the systematic removal of all autonomy, individuals begin to believe they are powerless to change their situation. The constant surveillance, the physical exhaustion, the lack of communication, the threat of collective punishment, it all combines to make organized resistance almost unthinkable. There is still much debate, however, on the prevalence and nature of small, personal acts of rebellion. A shared glance, a whispered word in the dark, a moment of slowdown in the laundry. These tiny acts of defiance, while incredibly risky, were often the only way for women to retain a shred of their own humanity. As you lie there in the dark, listening to the soft sounds of the other women breathing around you, the full weight of your situation crashes down. This is your life now. The bell, the laundry, the stew, the prayers, the aching body, the cold bed. Tomorrow will be exactly the same, and the day after that. And the day after that. There is no end in sight. The door has been knocked, and you are on the inside, with no map and no key. In the grey, pre-dawn light, a harsh bell jolts you from a shallow, restless sleep. There is no gentle waking here. One moment you are in the murky depths of a dream. The next you are sitting bolt upright on your hard mattress, your heart pounding. The day has begun. The routine is already in motion. You dress silently in the cold. Your movements stiff and sore. Every muscle in your back, your shoulders, your arms, screams in protest. The thin, lumpy mattress offered no comfort, no restoration. You simply passed from a state of active labor to a state of aching stillness. And now you are back again. But it's your hands that are the true testament to your new life. You look down at them as you pull on the coarse grey dress. They are almost unrecognizable. Yesterday, they were girls' hands, soft from a life that did not involve heavy manual labor. Now, they are swollen. The skin red and angry. The knuckles are raw and scabbed where they scraped against the washboard. A large, angry blister has formed in the palm of your right hand where you gripped the wooden paddle. And it has already broken, leaving a weeping, tender patch of raw skin. The lye soap from the laundry vats has dried your skin out, leaving it cracked and painful, especially around your fingernails. These hands are no longer just a part of your body. They are a diary, a physical record of your first full day of penance. They tell the story of the hot, caustic water, the rough, splintered wood, and the relentless, repetitive motion. Physical form of history being written onto your body. For the women in these institutions, their own bodies became the primary document of their experience. The scars, the calluses, the stooped posture from years of bending over vats, these were their archives. You are herded to the chapel for morning prayers, then to the refectory for a breakfast that is identical to last night's meal, a slice of dry bread and a mug of wheat. Better tea. There is no time to linger. The bells dictate the pace, and then it's back to the laundry. As you walk into the cavernous, steam-filled room, the heat and the chemical smell hit you again. It's a sensory assault that you now know is the backdrop to your existence. You take your place at the trough, next to a new mountain of soiled linen. The moment you plunge your hands back into the hot, soapy water, the pain is excruciating. The raw skin screams. The broken blister feels like it's on fire. Salt from your own sweat drips into the cuts, making them stain even more. You bite your lip to keep from crying out. You learned yesterday that any display of weakness is a fault. It is a form of complaint, of rebellion, so you swallow the pain and begin to scrub. The heavy sodden sheet feels twice as heavy today. Your aching muscles refuse to cooperate fully. Every movement is a fresh wave of agony. The supervising nun notices your slowness. She walks over, her face a familiar mask of stern disapproval. She doesn't speak. She simply raps her long wooden rod sharply against the side of the stone roof, right next to your hands. The loud crack makes you jump. It's a warning. Work faster. Ignore the pain. The pain is part of the penance. Here's a small, grim piece of medical information. The conditions in the laundries were a recipe for chronic health problems. The constant dampness and poor ventilation led to respiratory illnesses like bronchitis and pneumonia. The back-breaking labor resulted in lifelong spinal and joint problems. But the most common and immediate affliction was on the hands. Chronic dermatitis, weeping sores, fungal infections under the nails, panty, permanent fissures in the skin were rampant. The nuns offered little to no medical care for these conditions. An infected cut was a sign of a fraud soul, not a workplace injury. Poultices made of bread were sometimes applied, but proper antiseptics or bandages were rare. You were expected to offer up your suffering to God. As you force your body to work, you try to find a way to manage the pain. You shift your grip on the paddle, trying to protect the broken blister. You adjust your posture, trying to ease the strain on your back. It's a constant, desperate negotiation with your own physical limits. You look at the hands of the woman working next to you. She is older, maybe in her 40s, but it's hard to tell. The laundry ages everyone. Her hands are not like yours. They are gnarled, the knuckles swollen like nuts on a tree root. The skin is thick and leathery, crisscrossed with a network of silvery scars. They are the hands of a woman who has been doing this work for decades. They look strong, terrible, almost inhuman. And you realize with a sinking horror that this is what your hands will become. This is the future. Your soft skin will harden into a callus. Your pain will dull into a permanent, low-grade ache. Your body will adapt to the brutality, and in doing so, you will lose another piece of the girl you were. The question of compensation and acknowledgement for the physical toll of this labor is a major part of the modern struggle for justice for the Magdalene survivors. How do you put a price on a lifetime of chronic pain? How does a government apology fix a spine that was permanently damaged when you were a teenager? Historians and legal experts are still grappling with this. They debate whether to classify the experience as forced labor, slavery, or a unique form of institutional abuse. The label matters because it affects how the state recognizes and compensates for the damage done. The physical evidence, etched onto the bodies of thousands of women, is undeniable, but the legal and moral interpretation is still a battleground. By midday, your hands are numb. The initial sharp agony has subsided into a dull, throbbing ache that radiates up your arms. You found a rhythm, a deadened, mechanical rhythm that allows you to function despite the pain. You are learning to dissociate from your own body, to treat it as a tool that is not entirely your own. You are scrubbing a man's shirt, and you see a small, cheerful, embroidered logo on the pocket. It's for a fancy hotel in Dublin. You have a sudden, dizzying vision of the man who wore this shirt, a guest at the hotel, laughing, drinking, living a life of freedom and ease, completely unaware that his dirty laundry is being washed by a girl who is a prisoner, whose hands are bleeding to make his collar white. The vast, unbridgeable gulf between his world and yours is a physical blow. You are the unseen, silent labor that props up his world. Your hands, your story, your pain, they are invisible. The days melt into a punishing, indistinguishable blur. Bell, chapel, bread, laundry, stew, chapel, bell, bed. It's a loop. A cycle designed to grind down time itself into a flat, featureless plane. Your body is slowly, brutally, adapting. The initial sharp pains are dulling into a constant, weary ache. Calluses are forming on your hands. Nature's crude attempt to protect you from the work that is your new reality. But in the cracks of this rigid, soul-crushing routine, something fragile and dangerous begins to grow connection. It doesn't happen in the light of day, doing work. In the refectory, in the chapel, you are an island. Eyes down, mouth shut. You are Cecilia, number 147, a penitent performing her duties. To speak, to even make eye contact, is to invite the wrath of the nuns. But the night is different. The dormitory is a cavern of deep shadows, pierced only by the faint moonlight filtering through the high, barred windows. The supervising nun sits on her platform, a dull, motionless silhouette, but she cannot see into every corner, cannot hear every whisper that is softer than a breath. The beds are packed close together, a sea of iron frames and thin mattresses, and in this forced proximity, a silent language develops. A slight pressure of a hand on an arm as you pass in the dark, a shared glance that lasts a fraction of a second too long, a quiet, stifled sob from a nearby bed that is met not with silence, but with the soft rustle of someone reaching out a hand in the darkness. These are the first seeds. The real conversations happen later, in the dead of night, when the supervising nun has been replaced by another who sometimes dozes, her head nodding on her chest. The whispers start, tentative and terrified. What's your real name? The question comes from the girl in the next bed. Her name here is Agnes. She's been here for 6 months. The whisper is so quiet. You almost think you imagined it. To use your real name is the greatest taboo. It's an act of rebellion, a reclaiming of the self that was stolen at the gate. You hesitate. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, but the need to be known, to be seen as who you really are, is a powerful, desperate hunger. Sarah, you breathe back, the name feeling both strange and wonderfully familiar on your lips. Kate, she whispers. And just like that, a crack appears in the wall of the institution. In the darkness, you are not Cecilia and Agnes, 2 penitents. You are Sarah and Kate, 2 girls. This is how you learn the stories. In hushed, fragmented whispers. Night after night, the women share the reasons for their incarceration. The tapestry of sin is heartbreakingly mundane. Kate was sent here because her letters to a boy were discovered by her mother. The girl across the aisle, Mary, was a victim of sexual assault by a relative, and her family sent her away to hide the shame. An older woman named Eileen, who has been here for 30 years, was simply too beautiful and high-spirited, and her priest feared she would be a source of temptation for the men in the parish. Another woman had a baby out of wedlock. The baby was taken from her and given up for adoption, and she was sent here to repent. Listening to these stories is both a comfort and a terror. A comfort because you realize you are not alone in your crime of being young, or naive, or simply unlucky. A terror because you realize the utter randomness of it all. There is no logic, no justice. You were all condemned by a society that was terrified of female sexuality in all its forms. This sharing of stories is a fundamental part of the survivor experience, both in and out. In a place designed to erase their histories, the women became living archives for each other, preserving the truths that the institution tried to bury. You find a strange, fragile camaraderie in this shared, hidden world. You learn the nuances of the system. Kate teaches you how to fold the sheets in a specific way that saves a few seconds of work, a tiny, precious efficiency that the nuns haven't noticed. You learn which nun is the cruelest, which one might turn a blind eye to a moment of rest as she's in a good mood. You learn to communicate with your eyes, a whole vocabulary of shared glances warning. The nun is coming sympathy. I know your hands hurt to solidarity. We will get through this shift. Here's a small, poignant detail about these secret friendships. Sometimes, the women would manage to create tiny, secret gifts for each other. A bit of thread pulled from a blanket, woven into a tiny bracelet. A pretty, smooth stone found in the yard and passed from hand to hand. Or, most precious of all, a stolen piece of bread, saved from a meal and shared under the covers with a girl who was being punished with starvation. These tiny objects were acts of profound love and defiance in a place that tried to stamp out both. But this friendship is a double-edged sword. It is a lifeline, but it is also a profound risk. The question of trust is a constant, gnawing anxiety. The nuns actively encourage informing. A girl who reports another for breaking a rule might be rewarded with a slightly bigger portion of food, or an easier job for the day. This system deliberately sowed paranoia and division among the inmates. Could you trust the girl you shared your real name with, or was she desperate enough for a moment's relief that she would betray you? Historians and sociologists call this horizontal violence, where oppressed groups are manipulated into policing each other on behalf of their oppressors. It's a classic to love control, and it meant that every whispered conversation, every shared secret, was a gamble. There is still debate about how common betrayal actually was, versus the fear of betrayal. Survivor accounts differ, suggesting a complex social world where deep loyalty and desperate self-preservation existed side by side. One night, Kate whispers to you about a girl who tried to escape a few months ago. She tells you where she got over the wall, how long she was gone. It's a story told with a mixture of awe and terror. The story doesn't have a happy ending, but the very idea of it, the possibility of escape, is a tiny spark in the suffocating darkness. It's a dangerous seed to plant in your mind. But for now, the simple act of sharing the story is enough. In the whispered darkness of the dormitory, you are not just washing away the sins of the world, you are piecing together your own. Days turn into weeks, and the rhythm of the laundry becomes the rhythm of your life. The initial shock has worn off, replaced by a dull, grinding acceptance. You are a part of the machine now. You know the routine. You know the rules. You know the low-grade ache in your bones that is your constant companion. And with this familiarity comes a new, more cynical understanding of the place you are in. You start to notice the details, the sheer volume of the laundry to run. It never, ever stops. Every morning, a van arrives at a back gate you are not allowed near and unloads mountains of soiled linen. Every evening, another van leaves, filled with bundles of perfectly washed, ironed, and folded laundry, crisp and white. This isn't just the parish priest's vestments or the convent's own tablecloths. The scale is industrial. Through whispers in the dormitory and stolen glances at labels and logos on the items you wash, you begin to piece together a client list. You recognize the crest of the Irish Army on rough woolen blankets. You see the elegant, embroidered name of a famous, expensive hotel in the city center on fine cotton sheets. There are the crisp uniforms of nurses from a nearby hospital, the heavy canvas bags from the National Postal Service, and even, once, a load of delicate linens that one of the older women recognizes as belonging to AR as a new Tarian, the residence of the President of Ireland. The realization dawns on you. Cold and hard, this isn't about penance. This is about profit. You are not a penitent being guided back to the path of righteousness. You are a worker, an unpaid, captive worker in a commercial enterprise that is disguised as a religious institution. Your suffering is not a spiritual currency to save your soul. It is free labor that generates immense, untaxed revenue for the religious order that holds you captive. This is the fundamental, damning truth of the Magdalen Laundries, a fact that was hidden in plain sight for decades. They were businesses, operating under the protection of the state and the moral authority of the church. The Irish state was not just a passive bystander, it was a client. By contracting with the laundries, the government directly enabled and profited from the system of forced labor. It gave the institutions of an air of legitimacy and a steady stream of income, ensuring their continued operation. This symbiotic relationship between church and state is a central theme in any serious historical analysis of the laundries. The knowledge changes how you see everything. The endless prayers you are forced to recite while you work now feel less like a path to salvation and more like a brutally efficient method of keeping the workforce docile and focused. The meager food is not just about teaching you humility, it's about cutting costs and maximizing profit margins. The high walls and locked gates are not just to keep you from the temptations of the world, they are to keep the unpaid workforce from escaping. You are standing at the giant, hand-cranked mangle, feeding through heavy, wet sheets. It's a two-person job. On the other side is Eileen, the woman who has been here for 30 years. Her movements are slow but precise. The mangle is a dangerous piece of equipment. One moment of inattention and your fingers could be caught and crushed in the heavy rollers. Mind yourself, Eileen murmurs, her voice so low it's barely audible over the groaning of the machine. It's a rare daytime communication, a small act of kindness. You look at her, really look at her, and see the deep, weary resignation in her eyes. She has been a part of this sinful business for longer than you have been alive. She has washed the laundry of a changing Ireland, of governments and businesses that rose and fell, all from within these shameful walls. Here's a small, infuriating economic fact. The laundries had an unfair competitive advantage. They had no labor costs, paid no taxes on their income as they were registered as charities, and often received state subsidies for every woman they housed. This allowed them to undercut commercial laundries, effectively putting their businesses with paid employees out of work. So the system not only exploited the women inside but also had a negative impact on the local economy outside. The penitent's profit model raises complex questions that historians still grapple with. Did the individual nuns on the ground, the ones supervising your work, understand the full financial scope of the operation, or were they, in their own way, indoctrinated to believe purely in the spiritual mission? Many survivor accounts suggest a spectrum of personalities among the nuns. Some were undeniably cruel and seemed to relish their power. Others were more distant, simply enforcing the rules. A few were even described as showing small, fleeting moments of kindness. This makes it difficult to paint them all with a single brush. The debate continues: were they cynical business managers hiding behind habits, or were they low-level functionaries in a much larger system, driven by sincere, if terribly misguided, ideology? The answer is likely that both types existed, making the reality far messier than simple villainy. One afternoon, a large, expensive-looking car pulls up in the main driveway, a rare sight. A well-dressed man gets out and is greeted by the Mother Superior herself. They walk through the grounds, the man gesturing and talking, the Mother Superior nodding. They are kept far from the laundry, far from the sight and sound of the labor. Kate whispers later that night that she as a businessman, a potential new client. You watch them from a high window in the dormitory, a brief, stolen glance before a nun shoos you away. You see the clean, starched white of the man's collar, and you have the sudden, sickening realization that you probably washed that very shirt last week. You are laundering the clothes of the men who are negotiating the terms of your own exploitation. The business is not just happening around you, it is happening on you. Your body, your labor, your stolen life. You are the product being sold. Time in the laundry has a strange, corrosive quality. It doesn't pass in a linear way, it grinds you down in a repetitive cycle. Weeks, months, you've stopped counting. The seasons change, but your view of them is limited to the quality of the light through the high, grimy windows or the temperature of the rain that drips from the ceiling. Your world has shrunk to the dimensions of these stone walls. One day, while you are scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain from a tablecloth, you catch a glimpse of yourself. It's not a proper mirror. Mirrors are a vanity, forbidden here, but a distorted, wavering reflection in a puddle of water on the flagstone floor. You pause for just a second, your hands still in the murky water, and stare at the stranger looking back at you. You almost don't recognize her. The face is pale and gaunt, the cheekbones more prominent than you remember. There are dark circles under the eyes that have become a permanent feature. The eyes themselves are what shock you the most. The bright, lively spark you once had is gone. In its place is a dull, weary watchfulness. It's the look of an animal that has learned to expect a blow. Your hair is a ragged, uneven mess, hacked short and growing out in clumsy tufts. It's lank and lifeless from the constant steam and the harsh soap you use to wash it once a week. Your body, hidden beneath the shapeless grey uniform, feels different too. It's thinner, but also harder. The soft curves of youth are being replaced by the sinewy, functional muscle of a laborer. You are being reshaped, physically and mentally, by the institution. This experience of derealization and loss of self is a profoundly common theme in survivor testimonies. Many women speak of a moment when they caught their reflection and felt a deep sense of alienation from the person staring back. It wasn't just about looking tired or unwell, it was a fundamental feeling of having been hollowed out, of the person they once were having become a ghost that haunted their own body. This psychological toll is a key aspect of the abuse, as damaging as any physical hardship. You quickly look away from the puddle, a hot flush of shame rising in you. To look at your own reflection is an act of vanity, or sin. A nun is patrolling nearby. You could be punished for this moment of self-contemplation. You scrub harder at the tablecloth, your head bowed, your heart thumping. But the image is burned into your mind. The ghost in the puddle. Later, in the refectory, you eat your watery stew, the spoon moving from bowl to mouth in a mechanical rhythm. You look around at the other women. You see the same gaunt faces, the same haunted eyes, the same look of dull, exhausted resignation. You are all becoming ghosts. You are being systematically erased, scrubbed of your identity, just as you scrub the dirt from the endless piles of laundry. Here's a strange and specific detail about the environment: the lack of color. The laundries were deliberately monochromatic. The grey uniforms, the grey stone walls, the grey blankets, the grey gruel. Even the clean laundry you produced was almost exclusively white. This sensory deprivation was another subtle form of control. A world without color, without beauty, without sensory stimulation, grinds down the human spirit. It makes the world outside, with its vibrant greens and blues, feel like an impossible, distant dream. You try to remember your own face from before. You close your eyes and try to picture yourself at the dance. The memory is fuzzy, like a faded photograph. You can remember the feeling, the laughter, the warmth, but the specific details of your own face are becoming harder to grasp. What did your smile look like? What was the exact shade of your hair in the sun? These memories, which were once your most precious secret treasure, are starting to slip away, worn down by the daily grind of survival. Historians and psychologists who study long-term institutionalization talk about the concept of identity death. It's the point at which the inmate's souled identity, their pre-institutional self, effectively ceases to exist in their own mind, fully replaced by the new institutional identity in your case. Cecilia, penitent, number 147. This is not something that happens overnight. It is a slow, insidious process. Is there a point of no return? Can a person's original self ever be fully recovered after such a profound error? This question is central to the ongoing debate about the long-term psychological trauma suffered by the Magdalene survivors. The consensus is that while the institutional identity can be shed, the ghost of it, and the ghost of the lost self, remains a lifelong companion. That night, lying in the cold dormitory, you can't sleep. The image of the face in the puddle haunts you. You press the heels of your hands into your eyes, trying to force the image away. You feel a tear escape and track silently down your temple into your ragged hair. You are not crying from the daily pain or the exhaustion. You are crying for the girl you are losing. The girl whose face is becoming a stranger's. You feel a small, hesitant touch on your arm. It's Kate, in the next bed. She doesn't say anything. She just leaves her hand there for a moment. A small, warm point of contact in the vast, cold darkness. It's a simple, profound gesture that says, I see you, not the ghost. You. In that moment, you realize that your memory is not the only thing keeping your old self alive. It lives in the whispers in the dark. It lives in the secret sharing of a real name. It lives in these tiny, stolen moments of connection. The institution may be trying to turn you into a ghost, but as long as one other person remembers your name, you are not entirely gone. In a world stripped of all power and autonomy, the human spirit seeks control in the smallest, most secret ways. You cannot choose your work, your food, or your name. You cannot speak freely or even control your own appearance. And so, rebellion is not a grand gesture. It is not a riot in the laundry or a fiery speech. Rebellion is a whisper. It is a thing you can hold in your hand. It starts with a button. You are sorting through a pile of shirts destined for the washing vats. Most are plain, functional garments, but one, a finer quality shirt from a wealthy household, has beautiful, iridescent mother-of-pearl buttons. They shimmer in the dim light of the laundry, a tiny splash of beauty in the grey, utilitarian world, on an impulse you don't fully understand. Your fingers work quickly, shielded by the pile of laundry. You find a loose thread on one of the cuff buttons. A gentle tug, a little twist, and it comes free in your palm. Your heart is pounding. This is a transgression. A theft. You have damaged a client's property. If you are caught, the punishment will be severe. A public shaming, a beating, days of starvation. You clench your fist around the small, cool, smooth button. It feels like a tiny, secret star in your hand. You glance around. No one has seen you. The nuns are patrolling, but their attention is elsewhere. With deft, practiced movements born of a new kind of survival instinct, you slip the button into the waistband of your rough dress, tucking it into a fold of fabric. All day, you are acutely aware of it pressed against your skin. It's a tiny, hard-edged secret, a point of focus. Every time you feel its slight pressure, it's a reminder that you did something no one knows about. You made a choice. You took something. In a life where you are nothing, this tiny, stolen button is the most precious treasure you can imagine. This is the nature of resistance in a total institution. James C. Scott, a political scientist, termed these kinds of actions weapons of the weak. When open defiance is impossible, the powerless resort to small, covert acts of non-compliance, sabotage, and theft. These acts may seem insignificant from the outside, but for the individual, they are monumental assertions of selfhood. They are a way of saying, you do not control everything. You do not own my mind. That night, in the darkness of the dormitory, you take the button out. You hold it in your palm, feeling its smoothness, watching how it catches the faint moonlight. It's a link to the outside world, a world of color and beauty. It's a piece of evidence that such a world still exists. You show it to Kate. She gasps, a tiny, sharp intake of breath. She understands the risk and the significance. It's beautiful, she whispers, touching it reverently with the tip of her finger. This one small act of rebellion emboldens you. You start to see opportunities for tiny defiances everywhere. A deliberate slowdown in your work rhythm when a nun isn't looking. A moment of malicious incompetence that costs the laundry a few precious minutes of productivity. Humming a tune from the outside world, a pop song. A dance melody so quietly that it's indistinguishable from the noise of the machines. The secret soundtrack to your labor. Sharing a morsel of your bread with a girl who is being punished. A redistribution of the institution's meager resources, done with a sleight of hand worthy of a magician. Here's a specific, and rather ingenious, form of this micro-rebellion reported by some survivors. The women in the ironing room, using the heavy, hot irons, would sometimes press tiny, almost invisible creases into the linen in the shape of a letter or a symbol. A B for Bridget, or a small heart. Hidden in the fold of a sheet, it was a secret signature, a mark of their existence sent out into the world on the crisp, white laundry. It was a message in a bottle that no one would ever know how to read, but they knew it was there. It was their art, their graffiti, their resistance. These acts create a silent, secret culture among a small group of you. It's a culture of shared risk and solidarity. You learn to be lookouts for each other. A subtle cough, a dropped cough, these become signals that a nun is approaching. You are building a community right under the noses of your captors. But these acts are not without their internal controversies. The question of sabotage was a delicate one, even among the inmates. To intentionally damage a piece of laundry could bring collective punishment down on everyone. A girl who was caught might be beaten in front of the others as an example, so there was a tension. How far could you push your defiance before you endangered not just yourself, but your friends? Historians who study resistance movements debate this very point, the line between individual acts of assertion and actions that threaten the group's fragile stability. This tension likely existed in the laundries, creating an unwritten code of what was acceptable rebellion and what was reckless. One day, you are assigned to the sorting room, a less physically demanding but mind-numbingly tedious job. You are sorting through pockets before the clothes go to the wash. You find a handkerchief, a tram ticket, a folded-up newspaper clipping. You are supposed to put these things in a discard box. But the newspaper, it's a piece of the outside world. Risking everything, you palm the small, folded square of paper. Later, in a rare, unsupervised moment in the lavatory, you unfold it. It's a fragment of a sports page, a report on a hurling match, the names of the players, the score. The description of the cheering crowd is like a letter from another planet. You read the words over and over, devouring the details, for a few precious moments. You are not in the laundry, you are in a stadium, feeling the sun, hearing the roar of the crowd. You tear the clipping into tiny, unreadable pieces and flush them away. You can't keep it, it's too dangerous. But you keep the memory of the words. You have stolen a story from the outside. These small acts of rebellion, the button, the hum tune, the stolen story, they are not going to get you out. You know this. They will not break down the walls. But they do something just as important. They keep a tiny flame of your own self alive in the suffocating darkness. They are a constant, secret decoration that you are not just Cecilia. Number 147. You are Sarah. And you are still here. In the rigid economy of the laundry, where your labor is the only commodity. You learn that everything is a tool of control. The work, the silence, the prayers, and, most fundamentally, the food. The daily menu is a testament to calculated deprivation. It never varies. Breakfast is a slice of dry, stale bread, sometimes with a scraping of margarine, and a mug of what is charitably called tea, mostly hot water with a faint brown tinge. The midday meal, served after hours of grueling labor, is the main event laid a la fuel of thin, watery stew, or grill. It's a grayish, lumpy concoction, usually made from boiled potatoes, turnips, and the occasional piece of grist lye, unit and fightable meat. It has a bland, slightly sour taste that you never quite get used to. Supper is a repeat of breakfast. On Sundays, as a supposed treat, there might be a boiled egg. This diet is not designed for nutrition. It is designed for subsistence. It provides just enough calories to keep you working, but not enough to foster a sense of strength or well-being. It keeps you in a state of perpetual, low-grade hunger, a physical manifestation of your powerless and deprived state. Hunger becomes a constant, dull ache in your stomach, another layer of discomfort in a life defined by it. This use of food as a means of control is a classic feature of rail institutions throughout history. A population that is perpetually hungry is a population that is easier to manage. Food becomes the ultimate reward and punishment. An extra slice of bread is a sign of favor. The denial of a meal is a common and brutally effective punishment for even the smallest infraction. You see it happen all the time. A girl caught whispering is made to stand in the corner of the refectory during the meal, watching everyone else eat. The gnawing emptiness in her stomach is a far more powerful lesson than any lecture. You become obsessed with food, not with fancy meals, but with the memory of simple things. The taste of a fresh, crisp apple, the salty, buttery goodness of a hot potato, the sweetness of your mother's soda bread, fresh from the oven. These memories are a form of self-torture, but you can't stop them. In the dormitory at night, you and Kate sometimes whisper about your favorite foods, describing them in loving, excruciating detail. It's a dangerous game, one that leaves you feeling even emptier, but it's a way of remembering a life where food was about pleasure and family, not just fuel and control. Here's a small, peculiar detail that highlights the psychological games played with food. In some laundries, the nuns' refectory was located near the inmates' dining hall. The women would have to smell the rich, savory aromas of the roasted meats, fresh bread, and proper cooking that the nuns enjoyed, while they themselves were eating the thin, tasteless gruel. It was a constant, olfactory reminder of the hierarchy and their own lowly position. It was another way of saying we are deserving. You are not. The quality of the food itself was often suspect. The ingredients were the cheapest available, often sourced from institutional suppliers or consisting of donations that were past their prime. You learn to recognize the slightly off taste of potatoes that are beginning to sprout, or the stringy texture of meat that is more fat and gristle than anything else. Complaints are, of course, unthinkable. You eat what you are given, grateful that you are being given anything at all. That is the message, reinforced daily. One day, you are assigned to kitchen duty. You imagine it might be a welcome break from the laundry. A chance to be somewhere warm that doesn't smell of bleach. But the kitchen is just another kind of factory. Your job is to stand at a huge sink and peel an endless mountain of potatoes. The work is tedious, but it puts you in direct contact with the raw ingredients of your own subsistence. You see the sacks of potatoes, the wilted-looking turnips. You see the small, carefully guarded pantry where the nuns' food is kept, the bags of white flour, the sugar, the jars of jam. The contrast is stark and infuriating. While peeling potatoes, your hands moving on autopilot, you notice a small, nub-like growth on one of them, an offshoot. You surreptitiously break it off. It's no bigger than your thumbnail. Later, when no one is looking, you pop it into your mouth. It's raw, starchy, and tastes of dirt. It is the most delicious thing you have eaten in months. It is delicious because it was not given to you. You took it. It is a secret, an act of self-preservation, a tiny rebellion against the enforced hunger. The health consequences of this long-term, low-grade malnutrition are a serious topic for historians and medical experts studying the legacy of the laundries. The lack of vitamins and protein led to a host of issues: anemia, dental problems, weakened immune systems, and skin conditions. The full extent of the damage is still being debated, as it's hard to separate the effects of the poor diet from the effects of the hard labor and the psychological stress. But it is clear that the diet was a form of systemic neglect. Was this neglect intentional? A cost-saving measure that callously disregarded the women's health, or was it born of an ignorance of nutritional science, combined with the belief that penitents deserved nothing more than the bare minimum? The evidence, particularly the stark contrast with the nuns' own diets, points strongly to the former. You learn that the other women have their own ways of supplementing their diet. A girl working in the garden might risk eating a raw pea or a sour gooseberry. Someone like you in the kitchen might steal a raw potato nub. These are not feasts. They are tiny, desperate acts to reclaim a sense of agency over their own bodies. That night, lying in your bed, the dull ache of hunger is still there, but it's mixed with the phantom taste of raw potato and the satisfying memory of your small, successful faith. You are learning the new currency of your world. It is not money or power. It is a stolen button, a whispered name, a piece of raw potato. These are the treasures of the damned. In this world devoid of normal communication, the written word takes on an almost magical significance. A letter would be a bridge to the world you lost, a tangible proof that you are still remembered, that the life you had before was real. The longing for a letter, for a single line from your family, becomes a constant, aching hope. But mail is another tool of control. Incoming letters are not given to you directly. They are opened, read, and censored by the Mother Superior. If a letter is deemed unsuitable, if it contains news that might upset you, make you nostalgic, or encourage thoughts of the outside world, it will simply be withheld. You will never know it arrived. You will just continue to wait, scanning the faces of the nuns for any sign, any hint that there is a message for you. The hope is a special kind of torture. After months of silence, you decide you cannot bear it any longer. You have to try to write to them. You have to ask them, why, when can I come home? Do you still think of me? The first challenge is obtaining the materials. Paper and pencil are controlled items, as dangerous as a key to the front gate. You can't just ask for them. To do so would be to admit you have something to say, a thought to express, which is itself a form of pride. It's Kate who helps you. She has been on kitchen duty, and she noticed that the nuns use small notebooks to keep track of supplies. One day, she manages to tear a single, blank page from the back of a notebook when no one is looking. It's a terrifying risk for her to take. And when she presses the folded-up page into your hand in the dormitory that night, it feels as precious as gold leaf. The pencil is harder. It takes another week. You finally find one, a tiny, worn-down stub, left behind by a maintenance man who came to fix a leaking pipe. You snatch it up and hide it in the hem of your mattress. Now you have the tools. The next challenge is finding the time and the place to write. A moment of solitude and secrecy in a place that is designed to have neither. The only place is the lavatory, a cold, drafty room with no privacy, but where you might be able to steal a few minutes alone. One afternoon, feigning a stomach-acheable complaint, given the diet you get permission to leave the laundry. Your heart is pounding as you walk down the corridor, the precious paper and pencil stub hidden in your hand. In the cold of the lavatory, you perch on the edge of a toilet and begin to write. Your hands, so used to the brutal work of scrubbing, feel clumsy and stiff holding the tiny pencil. The words come in a desperate, messy flood. Dearest Mom and Dad. You pause. Even writing the words feels like a physical connection to them. I hope you are well. I am praying every day, like the sisters tell us. The work is hard, but I am being a good girl. Please, tell me when I can come home. I miss you so much. I think about you all the time. Was it something I did? I am sorry for whatever it was. Please write to me. I need to hear from you. Your loving daughter, Sarah. You use our real name. It's a desperate plea to be recognized as the person you are, not the penitent they have tried to make you. You read the letter over. It's a mess of hope, confusion, and apology. You are apologizing, even though you still don't know what you did wrong. The institution has already taught you that guilt is your natural state. The act of writing is a profound release. For a few minutes, you are not Cecilia. Number 147. You are Sarah O'Malley, a daughter writing to her parents. You have a voice. This practice of censoring and controlling mail is a well-documented aspect of the Magdalene system. It served a dual purpose. It isolated the women from outside support systems that might challenge the laundry's authority, and it allowed the institution to control the narrative presented to the families. Letters from the women were often rewritten by the nuns to sound pious and content, reassuring families that their daughters were thriving in their care. Conversely, letters to the women were filtered to remove anything that might disrupt their penitence. It was a comprehensive system of information control. Now comes the impossible part: sending it. There is no mailbox here. You can't just put a stamp on it. Giving it to a nun would be pointless. She would hand it straight to the Mother Superior, and it would be destroyed. Your transgression severely punished. Here's a small, heartbreaking detail about these attempts to communicate. Some survivors tell stories of trying to slip messages to the drivers who delivered the laundry, or even to the bread man. They would hide a tiny, folded note in the hem of a sheet or in an empty flour sack, praying it would be found by a sympathetic soul on the outside. Most of these messages, these tiny acts of hope, were likely never found, simply washed away or discarded with the rubbish. Your only chance is a long shot. Kate tells you that one of the older nuns, Sister Agnes, sometimes walks by the outer wall to tend a small, secluded vegetable patch. The wall there is close to a quiet lane. If you could somehow get the letter to her, and if she was feeling charitable, it's a sliver of a chance. But it's the only one you have. The internal debate over whether any of the nuns were secretly sympathetic is a contentious one among survivors and historians. The overwhelming narrative is one of cruelty and cold indifference. However, a few accounts mention a nun who might perform a small, secret kindness and extricate her. A blind eye turned to a moment of rest. These accounts are rare and often ambiguous. Was it genuine compassion? Or just a moment of laxity? Did any nun ever help a girl send a letter? It's almost impossible to verify. To do so would have been a profound betrayal of her vows and the institution, risking her own position within the convent. It remains a painful, open question in a system so total. Was there any room for individual conscience? You fold your letter into a tiny square. For days, you carry it with you, waiting for an opportunity. Finally, you see your chance. You are on waiting duty in a different part of the garden. You see Sister Agnes walking towards her patch, with your heart in your throat. You walk towards her, head bowed, pretending to be looking for more weeds to pull. As you pass her, you accidentally stumble, and in that moment of confusion, You press the folded paper into her hand. "Please," you whisper, not daring to look at her face. "For my mother." You scurry away, your back tingling, expecting a shout, the alarm to be raised. But there is only silence. You don't look back. For the next few weeks, you live on a knife's edge of hope and fear. Did she post it? Did she destroy it? Did she report you every day? You watch for a sign, for a letter that never comes. The silence from the outside world remains unbroken. The letter, your tiny vessel of hope, has simply vanished into the great, absorbent void of the institution. The weeks following your failed attempt to send a letter are heavy with a new kind of silence. The desperate hope you nurtured has curdled into a flat, bitter resignation. You sent your heart out into the world, and the world did not answer. The silence is no longer just an absence of sound, it is an active presence, a confirmation of your abandonment. As the days shorten and are deeper, more biting cold seeps through the stone walls. A new word begins to circulate in the dormitory, whispers Christmas. The word itself is a contraband, a dangerous memory. For you, it conjures a flood of sensory ghosts, the smell of pine and baking spices in your mother's kitchen, the warmth of the fire, the sound of familiar laughter, the weight of a treasured gift in your hands. It's the memory of family, of belonging, of a world where you were loved unknown. To remember it here is an act of exquisite self-torture, a flicker of naive hope, a hope you hate yourself for having. It ignites within you. Maybe things will be different at Christmas. Maybe there will be a day of rest, a special meal, a moment of peace. Maybe the ironclad routine will bend, just for a day. The first sign of the approaching festival is a single, sad-looking fir tree, erected in the main hall. It is decorated with a few meager, handmade ornaments under string of old, dim electric lights. It looks less like a symbol of joy and more like another inmate, standing for laundry in the cold. The work in the laundry does not stop. In fact, it increases. The fancy hotels and wealthy homes have more parties, more guests, and thus, more stained tablecloths and fine napkins to be washed. You are laboring to prepare the outside world for a celebration you are forbidden from joining. This is the central, bitter irony of your situation. You are in a Catholic institution in a country that virtually shuts down to celebrate the birth of Christ. A holiday centered on family, peace, and goodwill. The state, the church, and the very families who sent you here will all be gathered in warmth and prayer, while you, their hidden secret, toil away in the cold steam. This profound hypocrisy is the bedrock of the entire system, espousing a doctrine of forgiveness and family, while operating a punitive system of forced labor that shatters it. On Christmas Eve, the work finally stops a few hours early. You are herded, not to the refectory for your usual grim meal, but to the chapel for a special service. You are ordered to sing carols. You stand there, your body aching, your hands raw, and force the words of Silent Night from your throat. The sound is thin and hollow in the vast, cold chapel. 100 exhausted, whispered voices singing of heavenly peace in a place that has none. It is a common performance of joy, and the dissonance is sickening. Christmas morning brings the treats. The breakfast is the same, but at the main meal, there is a tangible difference. The stew is thicker, with actual, discernible pieces of roasted meat. There is a whole roasted potato on your plate, its skin crisp. Compared to the daily gruel, it is a feast. You eat slowly, savoring every mouthful, trying to make it last. But the rule of silence is still in effect. You eat your Christmas dinner surrounded by others, yet completely alone. The only sound the scraping of spoons and the watchful presence of the nuns. After the meal, the Mother Superior makes a rare appearance. She walks down the long rows of tables, and with the help of another nun, distributes the Christmas gift. It's not a doll or a book or anything personal. You are handed a small, printed holy card with a picture of the Nativity on it, and a single, hard candy wrapped in cellophane. You hold the card and the candy in your palm. This is the institution's measure of your worth. I must reduce per gram of sugar. Here's a small, sad detail about these festivities. The giving of such small, identical, religious-themed gifts was a common practice. It served to reinforce the institutional identity rather than celebrate the individual. The gift wasn't for Sarah. It was for penitent 147. It was a reminder of your place, a tool for piety, and a way for the convent to document its own charity in its records. You look at the holy card. The image of the mother and child in the warm, glowing stable feels like a cruel joke. Many of the women in this room are here because they became mothers outside of marriage. Their babies were taken from them, their lives ruined, and now they are being given a picture of the very thing that condemned them, presented as a symbol of comfort. The motivation behind these gestures is a point of considerable debate for historians. Were the nuns acting out of a genuine, if deeply misguided, sense of Christian duty, believing that a slightly better meal and the holy card were true acts of charity? Were they trying, in their own rigid way, to offer a moment of respite, or was it a more cynical calculation, a strategic, low-cost way to manage morale, to prevent the simmering despair from boiling over into open rebellion during a time of heightened emotional vulnerability? Was it compassion? Or was it crowd control? The records left by the nuns offer no clear answer, leaving the truth buried somewhere in the complex psychology of the women who ran these prisons. The holiday is over by mid-afternoon. The brief change in routine only serves to make the return to the grind more jarring. You are sent back to the dormitories. There is no more talk, no more treats. The next day, the tree in the hall is already gone, and the laundry is back in full operation. The Christmas celebration did not make you feel better. It made you feel worse. It sharpened the pain of your isolation, holding up a mirror to everything you have lost. The memory of real Christmases is now more vivid and more painful than ever. The brief flicker of hope has been ruthlessly extinguished, leaving behind an even deeper darkness. You have been shown, in the starkest possible terms, that even on the most sacred day of the year, you are not a person. You are an inmate, and there is no holiday from that. The long, bleak winter grinds on. The brief, hollow mockery of Christmas is a distant memory, and the days have settled back into their relentless, unchanging rhythm. Within this grim monotony, you start to perceive a new layer of the institution's social structure. It's not just the simple hierarchy of nuns and girls. There is a complex, unspoken, and cruel pecking order among the inmates themselves. You are at the bottom, as a relatively new arrival. Still bewildered and not yet fully broken, you are an easy target. The girls who have been here longer, who have carved out tiny, precarious positions for themselves, look down on you. They see you as naive. You don't know the most efficient ways to work. You don't know which nun to avoid at all costs. You don't yet have the hard shell of cynicism that is necessary for survival. This hierarchy is not based on who is strongest or loudest. It is based on a far more insidious set of criteria: the nature of your sin. Through whispered conversations on keen observation, you learn that there are different classes of penitents. At the very top, afforded a sliver more respect or pity, are the women who were simply unmanageable or in moral danger, the ones, like Eileen, who were sent here for being too pretty or too spirited. Below them are the unwed mothers, the fallen women in the most literal sense. They carry a visible, historical shame, and their stories are the most tragic. Then there are the women who were institutionalized for what would now be considered developmental disabilities or mental health issues, swept into the system because their families couldn't or wouldn't care for them. And at the very bottom are the girls suspected of prostitution, a label applied with little or no evidence, a scarlet letter that marks them for the harshest treatment and the deepest contempt, not just from the nuns, but from some of the other inmates as well. This internal stratification is a classic feature of institutional life. It's a form of horizontal hostility, where the oppressed turn on each other. The institution fosters this division because it is a powerful tool of control. If the inmates are busy policing their own internal hierarchy, They are not uniting to challenge the authority of their captors. It keeps the community fractured and weak. You see it play out in small, cruel ways. A girl with a lesser sin might be given a slightly less arduous task for the day. A woman who is seen as more pious or repentant might be trusted with a small responsibility. By distributing the bread at mealtimes, a tiny scrap of power that she guards jealously. Your crime is ambiguous. You were flirtatious. You had a vivacious spirit. This puts you in a nebulous middle ground. But your newness makes you vulnerable. One day, a girl named Bridget, who has been here for years and carries the grim prestige of that longevity, shoves you aside to get to a less stained pile of laundry. Get out of the way, new girl, she mutters, her voice full of scorn. You don't know what you're doing. You say nothing. You have already learned that to fight back is to lose. This hierarchy was not just in the women's minds, it was sometimes formalized by the nuns. Here's a bizarre and little-known fact in some institutions. Different classes of penitents wore slightly different uniforms. It might be a different colored apron or a small, colored thread stitched into their collar. It was a visible marker of their sin and their status. A way of institutionalizing the shame and ensuring that the hierarchy was always visible. It turned the women's bodies into a walking billboard of their own condemnation. You also learn that there's a hierarchy of labor. The initial, brutal work at the washing vats is for the newcomers and the lowest class of penitents. If you are obedient and work hard for years, you might graduate to the mangles, or the drying rooms, or the most coveted position, the sewing room. The sewing room is warm, dry, and the work, while tedious, does not break your back or destroy your hands in the same way. It is the pinnacle of inmate achievement, a position of relative comfort that the women who hold it will defend fiercely. The question of why the women participated in this internal cruelty is a subject of deep and painful debate for historians and psychologists. Were they simply internalizing the judgmental, punitive ideology of the nuns? Was it a desperate survival mechanism? A way of deflecting abuse onto someone lower in the pecking order to protect themselves? Or was it a more complex human response to trauma? An attempt to create order and meaning in a chaotic and unjust world? The consensus is that it was a toxic combination of all these factors. The institution created the conditions for this cruelty, but the inmates themselves were the ones who enacted it. A tragic reality that adds another layer of complexity to their victimhood. One evening, you see Bridget talking to one of the supervising nuns, her head bowed respectfully. Later that night, you notice Bridget has an extra piece of bread with her supper. The implication is chilling. She is an informer. She maintains her slightly elevated position by reporting on the others. The knowledge makes your blood run cold. Who can you trust as Kate? Your only friend. Just pretending to be your confidant. The paranoia is a poison that seeps into every interaction. You are learning the most brutal lesson of the laundry. Your fellow inmates are both your only hope for solidarity and your most immediate potential threat. You are all in this prison together, but you are not all on the same side. The system is designed to make sure of it. This discovery is, in some ways, more devastating than the cruelty of the nuns. It is the death of the simple idea that shared suffering automatically creates unity. Here, suffering also creates competition. The ideal escape is a ghost that haunts the dormitory whispers. It's a fantasy, a daydream, a story you tell yourselves in the dark to keep from going mad. You talk about it in effervescent when it's a game of make-believe. But one day, the fantasy becomes a terrifying reality. A girl named Mary, the quiet, haunted-eyed girl who was sent here after being assaulted, reaches her breaking point. You don't know the exact moment she decided, but for days, you've noticed a new, frantic energy about her, a desperate glint in her eyes. The whispers in the dormitory had been about her family refusing to answer her letters, the ones the nuns claimed to have sent. The final thread of hope had snapped. The escape is clumsy and desperate. It happens in the late afternoon, during a shift change when there is a brief moment of organized chaos. Mary makes a break for it. She doesn't head for the main gate. She runs towards the back of the compound, to a section of the wall that is partially obscured by overgrown ivy. It's the spot Kate had told you about, the one from the story of the last failed escape. For a moment, everyone freezes. The inmates, the nuns, everyone is stunned by the sheer audacity of the act. Then, a nun's sharp whistle cuts through the air, and the place erupts. Nuns are shouting, running. It's a scene of pure panic and fury. Mary is surprisingly fast. Fueled by adrenaline and despair, she scrambles up the ivy, her grey uniform snagging on the thorns, her hands and knees scraping against the rough stone. A few of the girls let out a small, involuntary cheer, quickly stifled. You are frozen, your heart pounding in your chest, the wild, terrified hope surging through you. Go, go. She makes it to the top of the wall. For one glorious, heartbreaking second, she is silhouetted against the grey sky, a figure of impossible freedom. Then she drops down on the other side and is gone. A deadly silence falls over the laundry yard. The nuns are furious, their authority flagrantly challenged. The inmates are a mix of terror and exhilaration. She did it. Someone actually did it. The aftermath is swift and brutal. You are all herded into the refectory and locked in. There is no supper. You sit in silence for hours, listening to the sounds of the search outside the walls' shouted commands, the sound of a car starting. The Mother Superior comes in, her face like a thundercloud. She delivers a venomous speech about the sin of ingratitude, the wickedness of rebellion, and the dark fate that awaits us all who flees from God's grace. She says that Mary has chosen the path to hell, but what you hear is fear. She is afraid of losing control. This is the ultimate threat to the institution, not just the loss of a worker, but the loss of the narrative, an escape, even a temporary one. Proves that the walls are not insurmountable, that the system is not absolute. It plants the seed of possibility in the minds of the other inmates. That is why the response had to be so severe. The historical record is clear that escapes, while rare, were the single biggest disciplinary issue for the laundries, and they were met with the most extreme measures. Mary is gone for a day and a half. For that brief time, the atmosphere in the laundry is electric. There is a new, dangerous hope in the air. The girls whisper excitedly. Where did she go? Did she get home? Is she free? The hope is crushed on the second morning. She is brought back. To grim-faced civic guards, the police march her through the front gate, her hands bound, her face is bruised. Her uniform is torn and muddied, and her expression is one of utter, vacant defeat. She didn't make it far, with no money, no connections, and wearing the conspicuous uniform of an inmate. She was easily spotted and reported. The local community, and the local law enforcement, were often complicit in the laundry's car rail system, returning escapees without question. The state complicity is a crucial and damning aspect of the story. The laundries could not have functioned as prisons without the active cooperation of the police. An escapee was treated not as a person fleeing abuse, but as a criminal. This official support cemented the laundry's power and made the outside world just as much of a prison as the inside. The question of how much the individual guards knew or cared about the conditions inside is still debated by historians. Were they just following orders? Or did they share the prevailing social view that these fallen women needed to be locked up for their own good? Mary's punishment is designed to be a spectacle, a lesson for all of you. First, her head is shaved completely, right down to the scalp. The public shearing is an act of ultimate humiliation, marking her as a troublemaker. Then, she is brought before the entire assembly of inmates in the main hall. She is forced to kneel on the cold stone floor while the Mother Superior details her sins. Then, she is beaten, not a slap, but a systematic, brutal caning, delivered by one of the stronger nuns. You are forced to watch. You want to look away, to scream, to do something, but you are frozen in terror. The sound of the cane hitting her back, the soft grunts of pain, she cannot suppress. These sounds will haunt your nightmares for years. After the beating, She is locked in a solitary cell for a week with only bread and water. When she is finally returned to the laundry, she is a ghost. She doesn't speak. She doesn't make eye contact. Her spirit, which had flared so brightly for one desperate moment, has been completely extinguished. The lesson is brutally effective. The ghost of hope is exorcised from the laundry, replaced by a cold, heavy fear. The whispers in the dormitory cease. The risk is too great. The price of failure is too high. Mary's broken form is a constant, walking reminder there is no escape. The wall is not just made of stone. It is made of the police, the community, the church, and the state. It is everywhere. In the weeks after Mary's failed escape and brutal punishment, a thick blanket of fear and submission settles over the laundry. The secret whispers in the dormitory die out. The small acts of defiance become rarer. The risks too great. The routine is everything. The machine grinds on, and you are just one of its many worn-down cogs. Then, a new rumor begins to circulate. Passed not in whispers but in tense, stolen glances and subtle shifts in the nun's behavior. Visitors, official visitors, an inspection committee from the Department of Health. A jolt of something you thought was long dead or wild. Irrational hope shoots through you. Inspectors, people from the outside, people with authority. Surely, they will see the truth. They will see your raw hands, the haunted eyes of the women, the grueling labor. They will see that this is a prison, not a sanctuary. This could be it. This could be salvation. The hope is almost immediately smothered by the frantic, theatrical preparations that take over the institution. This is not going to be an inspection. This is going to be a performance. The entire laundry is thrown into a frenzy of cleaning unlike any you have ever seen. It's not about just washing the floors, it's about making the entire place shine. You are taken off the vats and handed rags and buckets of water with a sharp, clean scent of lemon oil. You are made to scrub the flagstones until they gleam. You polish the brass fittings on the huge, groaning laundry machine's fittings you never even noticed were brass before. The grimy windows are washed until sunlight, a stranger in this place, streams in, illuminating the dancing dust motes. The entire building is being given a Potemkin village makeover, a pristine facade to hide the rot within. The cruelty of it is that you are forced to be the stagehands for your own deception. Your aching body is used to create the illusion that will keep you imprisoned. The smells in the laundry change, too, for 2 days. The scent of roasting meat and baking bread wafts from the kitchens. They are preparing a special meal, not for you, but for the visitors. The aroma is a form of torture, a reminder of a world of good food and comfort that is being prepared right here, but is utterly beyond your reach. Then comes the casting call. The Mother Superior and her senior nuns walk through the laundry, their eyes scanning the women. They are not looking for the best workers. They are looking for the best actors. They select the girls who look the healthiest, the most placid, the ones whose spirits have been so thoroughly broken that they can be relied upon to be docile. These chosen few are given new, neatly mended uniforms and taken aside to be coached. You are one of the ones not chosen. You, with the defiant spark that still occasionally flickers in your eyes, are too much of a risk. You and the other unreliable less are given the task of cleaning out a distant, dark storage cellar on the day of the visit. You are to be hidden, kept out of sight. This is a well-documented tactic. The institutions knew when inspections were happening, as they were almost always announced in advance. This gave them ample time to prepare to clean the premises, to prepare a special meal, and, most importantly, to hide the most visibly ill, malnourished, or difficult women from the inspectors. The state's oversight was, in practice, a theatrical farce. The day of the inspection arrives. From your place in the cellar, you can hear the strange, unfamiliar sounds above the crunch of car tires on the gravel, the deep voices of men, the light, deferential laughter of the Mother Superior. You can picture the scene, the gleaming floors, the smiling, chosen girls sitting in the sewing room, quietly stitching, presented as the image of tranquil, productive penance. Here's a specific, cynical detail of the performance for the inspector's tour of the laundry itself. The main steam vats would be shut down. The air would be clear. A few of the chosen inmates would be set to a light task, like folding clean, fragrant linen at a table decorated with a vase of flowers brought in for the occasion. It was a complete fabrication of the daily reality of back-breaking, dangerous labor in a hot, steam-filled hell. After a few hours, the sounds recede, the cars dart away, a bell rings, and you are brought up from the cellar. The transformation is immediate and jarring. The pristine facade is already being dismantled. The leftover food from the inspector's meal is not given to you, it's taken to the nuns' refectory. The chosen girls are back in their old, worn uniforms. The lemon oil and the smell of roasted meat are gone, replaced once again by the familiar stench of lion-boiled cabbage. Reality crashes back in with the force of a physical blow. The hope you felt, that tiny, treacherous spot, is now a cold, dead ash in your gut. It's worse than the constant despair, the glimpse of a possibility, only to have it revealed as a cruel joke, is a new depth of psychological torment. You understand now? The inspectors were not here to save you. They were part of the system. And here lies a question that historians still fiercely debate. Were these inspectors government officials, doctors, men of society truly fooled by such an obvious performance, or were they willing participants in the charade? Did they see the pale faces and rough hands and simply choose not to question the official narrative? Challenging the authority of a powerful religious order was a risky proposition in 20th century Ireland. It was easier for everyone involved to accept a pious fiction, to file a positive report, and to allow the profitable, hidden system to continue. The debate over their complicity versus their incompetence is central to understanding how these institutions operated with impunity for so long, right under the nose of the state. That night, there is no chatter in the dormitory. There is nothing to say. You have all been shown, in the most definitive way possible, that the outside world is not coming to save you. The doors are locked from the outside as well as the inside. You are truly, utterly, on your own. The charade of the inspection marks a turning point, not an event, but a slow, internal erosion, the hope for outside intervention, a rescue from a world that you now know is complicit, dies completely. With its death, something else begins to fade, the sense of time as a thing that leads somewhere. Before, time was something to be endured, a sentence to be served. You held on to a vague, desperate belief that it would eventually end. No, that belief is gone. The days no longer feel like a path to a future destination. They are just a circle. Bailu, bell, chapel, bread, laundry, stew, chapel, bell, bed. Again and again. The future is no longer a date on a calendar, it is just more of this. You stop counting the months. You lose track of the years. The seasons still change, a fact you observe with a distant, detached part of your mind. The quality of the light shifts. The ivy on the walls thickens in summer and grows sparse in winter, but inside, it is always the same season of grey. You watch the other women, and you see the process happening to them. Too. You see it in Eileen, who has been here for decades. She moves with a slow, deliberate rhythm that seems ancient. She rarely speaks. Even in the secret whispers of the night, her face is a mask of placid resignation. She is not fighting the institution anymore. She has become a part of its landscape, as permanent as the stone walls. And you realize, with a cold, creeping horror, that you are becoming Eileen. Your body has long since adapted to the labor. The calluses on your hands are thick and permanent. The ache in your back is no longer a sharp pain but a dull, constant companion, so familiar you barely notice it anymore. You have been promoted from the washing vats. You now work at the giant, heated rollers used for ironing sheets, a position of seniority. It is less wet, but the searing heat is a different kind of hell. You move with the same practiced, economical motions as the other long-term women. Your body a finely tuned machine for this one specific purpose. One day, a new girl arrives. She is young, terrified, and defiant, her eyes flashing with an anger you dimly remember feeling yourself. She reminds you of you. You watch her go through the same process you did the shearing, the renaming, the first brutal day in the laundry. You see the shock, the pain, the confusion on her face. And you do nothing. You keep your head down. You focus on your work. A part of you wants to reach out, to offer a word of comfort, to warn her. But you can't. To associate with a new, rebellious girl is to draw unwanted attention to yourself. It is to risk the small, precarious stability you have built. Survival has taught you to be selfish. This realization is a new kind of shame, a deeper corrosion of your soul than any punishment the nuns could devise. You have internalized the system's logic. You have learned to protect your own small place in the hierarchy. This is the insidious, long-term psychological effect of institutionalization. The process of settling in or adapting is also a process of losing one's moral compass, of replacing empathy with a numb, self-preservative instinct. This is a recurring theme in the testimonies of long-term survivors. They speak of a point where they simply accepted their fate, where the fight went out of them, and their world shrank to the simple, daily goal of avoiding punishment. You see women around you growing old. Their hair, kept short in the institutional style, begins to show streaks of grey. Their faces wrinkle, their bodies, stooped from decades of labor, become frail. These are women who entered as girls, full of life, and are now approaching middle age, or old age, having never known a day of adult freedom. They have spent their entire lives washing the world's laundry, their own lives unlived. Here's a stark, demographic fact about the laundries. While many women were released after a few years, a significant number, particularly those who were orphaned, had no family to return to, or were deemed mentally deficient, were never released. They lived their entire adult lives and died within the convent walls. The laundry became their home, their workplace, and their tomb. One afternoon, you see Eileen stumble. She catches herself on the edge of a table, a hand flying to her chest. She is pale and breathless. For a moment, her mask of placid resignation slips, and you see a flicker of fear in her eyes, the fear of becoming useless. In this place, your value is your labor. If you can no longer work, what are you? A drain on resources, a problem to be dealt with. The question of what happened to women who became too old or too sick to work is one of the darkest corners of the laundry's history. The records are sparse, often deliberately so. Some accounts suggest they were moved to a separate infirmary wing, cared for with a kind of benign neglect until they passed away. Others hint at a more brutal reality, where the elderly and infirm were seen as a burden, their rations cut, their medical needs ignored, their deaths hastened by neglect. Historians are still trying to piece together the truth from scant records and survivor testimonies, but it's clear there was no gentle retirement for the women who gave their lives to the laundry's profits. That night, lying in the dark, you are not thinking of escape. You are not thinking of your family. You are thinking of your own body. You are acutely aware of the small aches and pains, the stiffness in your joints in the morning. You are probably only in your late 20s, maybe early 30s, it's hard to be sure. But you feel old. You feel worn. You look over at the new girl, huddled in her bed, probably crying silently, just as you once did. You see the line of your own life stretching out before you, and it looks like Eileen's. Decades of this, decades of steam and silence and prayer, until your body gives out. The horror of it is no longer sharp and piercing. It is a dull, heavy, permanent weight in your chest. You are no longer a prisoner waiting for release. You are simply aging. Here, the slow, Inexorable march of time within the laundry walls is measured not only by the graying hair of the inmates but also by their disappearances. One day, a woman is there, a familiar presence in the refectory or at the ironing tables. The next, she is gone. This happens with Eileen. The stumble you witnessed was a harbinger. A few weeks later, she is not in the laundry. Her place at the heated roller is taken by another woman. Her bed in the dormitory is empty. No announcement is made. No explanation is given. She has simply vanished. The silence that follows her disappearance is thick with unspoken fear. The inmates avoid each other's eyes. But the same question hangs in the air between them. Where is Eileen? The official story, passed down by a nun in a brief, clipped statement, is that she has been moved to the infirmary. She is resting, the nun says, in a tone that discourages further questions. But the infirmary is a black box, a part of the convent you never see. No one who goes there ever seems to come back. In the dead of night, the whispers start again, tentative and terrified. The fear of punishment is overcome by the need to know. They say there's a graveyard. A woman whispers from a few beds down. Her voice is barely audible. Out behind the old chapel. A graveyard. The word lands like a stone in the pit of your stomach. Another woman adds her piece of the story. A rumor she heard years ago. They don't put names. She whispers, just numbers, or nothing at all. This is the final, terrifying destination. After a lifetime of forced labor, of having your name and identity stripped away, you are not even granted the dignity of a proper burial. You are disposed of. Your existence erased from the earth as thoroughly as it was erased from society. You become a secret buried in unconsecrated ground. Your final resting place as anonymous as your life of penance. The existence of these unmarked graves is one of the most shocking and historically verified truths of the Magdalen Laundries. For decades, it was just a dark rumor. But in 1993, a convent in Dublin sold a portion of its land to a developer. During the excavation, a mass grave was discovered containing the remains of 155 women. The death certificates listed them, but there were no grave markers. They had been buried secretly, anonymously. This discovery was a bombshell. It ripped the veil of secrecy from the laundries and forced the Irish public to confront the horrific reality of what had been happening in their midst for over a century. You lie in your bed, thinking of Eileen. You picture her in old, hard-working hands, her face a mask of resignation. Did she die alone in the infirmary? Was she given last rites? Was her family notified? Or did she just cease to be? Her body quietly interred in a numbered plot. Her life story ending in a forgotten patch of earth. The fear you feel now is different from the fear of being beaten or starved. It is a deeper, more existential dread. It is the fear of utter annihilation, of not mattering, of having your entire life, your laughter at the dance, your love for your family, your pain, your small rebellions, your decades of suffering amount to nothing more than a forgotten corpse in a numbered grave. Here's a small, chilling detail about these burials. The death certificates for the women who died in the laundries often listed the cause of death as things like cardiac failure or respiratory disease. But they rarely, if ever, mentioned the underlying conditions caused by decades of hard labor, malnutrition, and neglect. The records were sanitized, presenting a picture of natural deaths rather than the slow, systemic destruction of human bodies. The cover-up continued even after death. The next day, the laundry operates as usual. The machine is indifferent to the loss of one of its cogs. Another woman has been moved up to take Eileen's place at the roller. The hierarchy shifts slightly. The rhythm continues, but something has changed for you. The walls of the laundry now feel less like a prison and more like a tomb. You are not just working here, you are waiting to die here. The debate among historians about these burial practices is intense. Was the use of unmarked graves a deliberate, cynical attempt to hide the number of deaths within the institutions and avoid public scrutiny, or was it, as the religious orders initially claimed, simply a matter of poverty? An inability to afford proper headstones for so many penitents. The evidence of the laundry's profitability makes the poverty argument seem hollow to most researchers today. The prevailing view is that the anonymity of the burials was the final step in the lifelong process of institutional erasure. A woman who was a number in life became a number in death. It was the logical, brutal conclusion of the entire system. You look around at the faces of the other women. You see the same fear reflected in their eyes. You are all haunted by the ghost of Eileen. You are all wondering the same thing: which one of us is next? How many other unmarked graves are out there? Will anyone ever know we were here? The work continues. You feed the heavy white sheets into the hot rollers. They come out smooth, pristine, ready to be sent back into a world that has no idea of the cost of its own cleanliness. You are not just washing away stains. You are participating in your own erasure, one clean sheet at a time, moving one day closer to your own unmarked grave. Decades pass. The world outside the laundry walls undergoes a seismic transformation, but the news trickles into your cloistered world in fragmented, distorted whispers. The other women are your only newspaper, your only radio. A new girl, fresh from the outside, might bring in a snatch of a modern song, a strange new slang word, or a bewildering story about a man walking on the moon. These fragments are like messages from an alien civilization. You hear whispers of a thing called television, of colorful moving pictures in a box in every owner's home. You hear of cars becoming commonplace, of roads being built, of Ireland joining something called the European Economic Community. The names of politicians change. The music on the radio that you never hear evolves from rock and roll to something called disco. The world you left, a world of rural dances and quiet piety, is vanishing, being replaced by something faster, louder, and more connected. But inside the laundry, time remains a flat circle. The work is the same, the prayers are the same, the grey uniforms are the same. You are living in a time capsule, a pocket of the 19th century that has stubbornly persisted into the late 20th. The high stone walls do not just keep you, and they keep the modern world out. You are not only a prisoner, you are an anachronism. This feeling of being left behind by time is a powerful and disorienting theme in the accounts of women who were institutionalized for long periods. When they were eventually released, they faced a world that was technologically and socially incomprehensible. They didn't know how to use a telephone, cross a street with traffic lights, or handle decimal currency. They were Rip Van Winkle figures, waking up in a future they had no tools to navigate. You are older now. Truly older. The fire of your youth has long since banked to a low, quiet ember. Your body is a roadmap of your life's labor, a collection of permanent aches and stiff joints. You have a position of some seniority now, overseeing the younger girls at the sorting tables. You are not cruel, like some of the other senior women, but you are distant. You enforce the rules of silence and diligence because you know that order is a form of safety. You have become part of the structure that once terrified you. One day, a young nun, Sister Mary, is assigned to supervise your section. She is different from the old, grim-faced matrons you are used to. She is young, her face lined, and her eyes hold a flicker of uncertainty, maybe even pity. She is a product of the new, post-Vatican II Church, a world that is beginning to question its own certainties. She tries to talk to you, to be kind. That's a heavy load, Cecilia, she might say, using your institutional name. Let me help you with it. Her kindness is more unsettling than the old cruelty. You don't know how to react to it. You have been conditioned for decades to expect harshness. This new approach is confusing. You rebuff her attempts at conversation with monosyllabic answers and by keeping your eyes downcast. You have learned that survival lies in being invisible, and she is trying to make you be seen. Here's a small but significant detail about this period of change. As the laundries began to slowly decline in the latter half of the 20th century, some of the younger nuns, influenced by modern ideas about social work and psychology, did try to introduce reforms. They might organize a movie night, or try to teach the women basic literacy. However, these efforts were often clumsy and failed to address the fundamental injustice of the situation, that the women were being held against their will. It was like trying to redecorate a prison cell instead of unlocking the door. Sister Mary represents the slow, grinding change in the outside world finally beginning to penetrate the walls. The laundry is becoming less profitable. Commercial, automated laundries are now cheaper and more efficient. The traditional client base, the government, the hospitals, is slowly moving their business elsewhere. The very economic model that sustained the institution for a century is crumbling. The number of women in the laundry is dwindling. Fewer new girls are being sent in. The old social certainties that allowed a priest to condemn a girl for being too flirtatious are eroding. Society is changing. The laundry is becoming a relic. The question of why the laundries persisted for so long, even after their economic and social justifications began to fade, is a complex one for historians. Part of the answer lies in simple institutional inertia. What were the religious orders to do with the remaining women, many of whom were elderly, institutionalized their entire lives, and had nowhere else to go? They had created a population of dependents on were now, trapped by their own system. The slow decline was, for many years, easier than the decisive, difficult act of shutting down and taking responsibility. You can feel the place winding down around you. The workload lessens. Some days, the great steam machines lie silent. The quiet is more unnerving than the noise. The routine, which has been the one constant in your life for decades, is starting to fray at the edges. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you have moments of unstructured time. You sit in the pale sun in the yard, your gnarled hands resting in your lap. You are surrounded by the other aging women, a silent community of survivors. You have been forgotten by the world. You are the last remnants of a secret history, living out your days in a crumbling institution that has lost its purpose. The fear of the unmarked grave is replaced by a new, more bewildering anxiety. What if they just open the gates? What exists for you out there? In a world that has moved on without you for 40 years, the prison you have known your entire adult life is dissolving. And you are terrified of the strange, unknown freedom that might lie on the other side. The end does not come with a bang, but with a slow, grinding whimper. The great machines in the laundry, the ones that provided the soundtrack to your life for decades, fall silent one by one. First the giant steam press, then the roaring tumblers. Their silence is more profound than any noise they ever made. The cavernous laundry room, once a hell of heat and steam, becomes a cold, echoing chamber, a museum of its own past. The work dwindles to almost nothing. You now spend your days mending the convent's own linens, tending the small vegetable garden, or simply sitting. The rigid, bell-driven schedule dissolves into a strange, formless quiet. The structure that has defined your every waking moment is gone, and its absence is deeply disorienting. You and the few dozen remaining women, mostly elderly, all institutionalized for decades, are like a forgotten army waiting for a final order that never comes. The economic reality had finally caught up with the pious fiction. The last of the commercial contracts dried up. Automated laundries were faster, cheaper, and didn't come with the inconvenient baggage of a captive workforce. The Magdalene Laundry, as a business, was bankrupt. Its original purpose, the moral reform of fallen women, had long been rendered obsolete by a changing society. The institution was a dinosaur, lumbering towards its own extinction. This slow decline happened across Ireland from the 1972 through to the 1992. The closure of the final Magdalene Laundry in 1996 is considered the definitive end of the era. The state, which had once been a primary customer, had long since stopped sending women to these institutions and had withdrawn its meager per capita funding. The laundries were left too slowly wither away. The atmosphere among the remaining women is a strange mix of anxiety and a deep, weary inertia. The younger, more adaptable nuns like Sister Mary have been reassigned. The ones who remain are the old guard, Women almost as old as the inmates they guard, moving like ghosts through the quiet corridors. They too are relics of a bygone era, their authority now seeming hollow and pathetic. One day, you are helping to clear out an old storage room. You find a box of old ledgers, brushing the dust from the cover. You open one. Inside, inmate, spittery handwriting, are lists of names next to numbers and dates of entry. You scan the pages. Your heart starting to beat a little faster, and then you see it. Sarah O'Malley, Yosti. Admitted June 12th. Ba. You stare at your own name. Your real name. A name you haven't seen in print for nearly 40 years. It's like looking at the epitaph of a stranger. Ba. It's a date. A solid, concrete fact in a life that has been a blur. You do a quick, clumsy calculation in your head. You were 16 when you arrived. You are now in your mid-50s. Your entire adult life has been lived within these walls. Seeing your name in the ledger is a profoundly jarring experience. It is proof. It is a record. The institution that tried so hard to erase you had, in its own bureaucratic way, kept the evidence of your existence. This archival evidence ledgers, admission records, death certificates would later become critically important for historians and survivor groups seeking to establish the facts and demand justice. These documents are the institution's unwitting confession. You close the ledger and put it back in the box. The knowledge doesn't bring you comfort. It brings a fresh wave of grief for the life that was stolen, a life that is now just a single line of ink in a dusty book. Here's a small, poignant detail about this final phase. As the institution's work closing, the religious orders were faced with the question of what to do with their vast archives. In some documented cases, there were allegations that large volumes of records were deliberately destroyed, burned, or shredded in an attempt to conceal the history of the laundries before investigators could get to them. This potential destruction of evidence remains a point of extreme contention and anger for survivor groups, who see it as a final, cynical act of erasure. The historical debate over whether this was a systematic, centrally ordered destruction or a series of panicked, localized decisions is ongoing. The final load of laundry is a pathetic sight. It's just the convent sewn sheets and towels. You and a few other women wash them by hand in a small, modern washing machine that was installed a few years ago, a machine that rendered your entire life's labor obsolete. You wring them out, hang them to dry. As you fold the last clean sheet, a warm, fragrant piece of linen, you realize this is it. The work is done. The penance, it seems, is over. A few days later, the Mother Superior, a woman you barely know as the leadership has changed over the years, calls the remaining women into the refectory. She looks old and tired. She announces, in a flat, unemotional voice, that the convent is closing this wing. Arrangements will be made. For those with family, they will be contacted. For those without, they will be transferred to a state-run nursing home. The news has met with a deep, unsettling silence. There are no cheers of liberation. There is only the quiet, terrified intake of breath from women who are being told their world, the only world they have known, is about to end. The prison doors are finally being opened, but you have forgotten what it means to be free. The day the gates are opened for good is not a day of celebration. It is a day of quiet, bewildering terror. You stand in the driveway, the same gravelly spot where you were dropped off a lifetime ago, clutching a small plastic bag that contains your only possessions, a change of clothes donated by a charity, and a few toiletries. You are wearing a cheap, ill-fitting coat over a polyester dress. The fabrics feel strange and slick against your skin after a lifetime of rough spun cotton. The large wooden gates, which have been the boundary of your world for 40 years, are propped wide open. They look naked and vulnerable. Beyond them, the world hums with a strange, intimidating energy. You can see cars flashing past on the road, moving faster than you can properly track. The sounds are a disorienting symphony of engine roars, distant sirens, and the unfamiliar chatter of modern life. A social worker, a kind but harried young woman, is here to manage the transition. She has a list. She calls out names. A few of the women are met by stoop. Elderly relatives, a brother or a sister they haven't seen in decades. The reunions are awkward, strained, full of the vast, unspoken chasm of the lost years. Your name is called. Sarah O'Malley, the sound of your real name, spoken by a stranger, is a shock. The social worker tells you that they tried to trace your family. Your parents, she says gently, passed away many years ago. Your siblings emigrated. They have no current address for them. There is no one to collect you. The news lands without impact. It's hard to mourn people who have been ghosts to you for decades. The real loss happened a lifetime ago. You, along with a dozen other women who have nowhere to go, are to be taken by minibus to a state-run residential home on the other side of the city. This was the stark reality for many of the last Magdalenes. They were not freed into the arms of a welcoming family. They were simply transferred from one form of institution to another. The state, having been complicit in their confinement, now had to deal with the consequences. A population of elderly, institutionalized women with no skills, no money, and no experience of the modern world. Their freedom was just a different kind of dependency. You climb onto the minibus. The seats are plush and feel unnerving warm soft. You choose a seat by the window and press your face to the glass, just as you did in the car that brought you here. But this time, you are watching the laundry disappear behind you. The imposing stone building, the high walls, the place of your torment and your only home, shrinks in the distance until it is gone. You feel a strange, hollow ache in your chest. It is not sadness. It is not relief. It is the profound dislocation of a mariner whose ship has sunk, leaving them adrift in a vast, unfamiliar ocean. The journey through the city is a sensory assault. The sheer speed of the traffic is terrifying. The buildings are impossibly tall, made of glass and steel that reflects the sky. The people on the streets are dressed in a bewildering kaleidoscope of bright colors and strange styles. Women are wearing trousers. Men have long hair. Everyone seems to be talking into small plastic bricks they hold to their ears. It is overwhelming, alien, and deeply isolating. Here's a small detail that survivors of long-term institutionalization often report: supermarket. The simple act of going into a supermarket for the first time was a source of profound anxiety and confusion. The overwhelming choice, dozens of types of bread, a whole I love breakfast cereals, was paralyzing for someone used to a world with no choices at all. The bright lights, the loud announcements, the sheer volume of products was an unbearable sensory overload. You arrive at the nursing home. It is clean, bright, and smells of antiseptic and air freshener. It is not a prison, but it is another institution. You are assigned a room, a bed, a meal time. The routine is different, gentler, but it is a routine nonetheless. You are safe. You are cared for, but you are not free. Your first few weeks are a blur of confusion. You have to learn how to use a television remote. You have to learn how to use a modern telephone. You have to learn that you can choose what to eat, a concept so foreign it gives you a headache. You mostly stick with the other laundry women. You huddle together in the common room, a small, silent island of grey in the cheerful, chattering world of the nursing home. You understand each other without words. You share a history that no one else here can even begin to comprehend. The question of what constitutes justice for the Magdalene women is a central, ongoing debate. Is it financial compensation? Is it a state apology? Is it counseling and support services? Many argue that true justice is impossible, because you cannot give someone back a lost life. The experience of the last women to leave the laundries highlights this. They were freed, but they were so damaged by their experience that they were incapable of living truly independent lives. The debate then shifts: what is the state's moral obligation to care for these women for life, as a result of its role in their initial confinement? One afternoon, the social worker takes you out to a small park. You sit on a bench, feeling the sun on your face. It's one of the first times you've been in a public space. truly out in the world. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, runs past you, laughing, her hair swaying behind her. She is wearing bright pink sneakers that light up with every step. You watch her, and for the first time in a long time, you feel a sharp, piercing emotion. It is a profound, bottomless grief for the 16-year-old girl who loved to dance, whose hair shone in the moonlight, who was stolen from the world before she ever had a chance to live in it. You begin to weep, silent tears tracking down your wrinkled cheeks. You are crying for the life you never got to live, and for the stranger you have become. You are finally out, but you know, with a dreadful certainty, that you will never truly leave the laundry behind. You live your new, quiet life in the residential home. The days are peaceful, structured, and safe. The staff are kind. But you are a ghost, haunted by a past that has no context in this modern world. You rarely speak of it. Who would you tell? How could you even begin to explain a lifetime spent in a 20th century penal laundry to a nurse born in the 1980s? The gap is too vast. Your story remains locked inside you, a heavy, indigestible stone. Then, one evening, something remarkable happens. You are sitting in the common room, half watching the television news. The other residents are chatting or dozing. A news report comes on. The screen shows a piece of muddy, excavated land. And then, a reporter's voice, serious and solemn, begins to speak about the discovery of a mass grave on the former grounds of a convent laundry in Dublin. He says the number 155 bodies, most in unmarked graves. The room falls silent. The other laundry women in the room with you slowly turn their heads towards the television. Their eyes are wide. You lean forward, your hands gripping the arms of your chair. The report continues. It shows old, black and white photographs of severe-looking nuns and gaunt-faced girls in grey uniforms. It shows images of blonde villagers, with names and numbers. The reporter uses words you have only ever dared to whisper: forced labor, punitive confinement, human rights abuses. He is telling your story. He is telling the world your secret. For decades, the Magdalene Laundries were an open secret in Ireland. People knew they existed, but they didn't talk about it. It was part of the landscape of shame and silence that shrouded so many aspects of Irish life. But the discovery of the mass grave at Hyde Park Convent in 1993 was a catalyst that changed everything. It was undeniable, physical proof. It was a story the media could sink its teeth into. And it forced a national and international reckoning. This event is the single most important turning point in the public history of the laundries. In the days and weeks that follow, it's all anyone is talking about. Newspapers are filled with stories. The television shows documentaries. The unspeakable is finally being spoken. The invisible finally being made visible. The stone of silence that has weighed on the nation for a century is finally cracked. A journalist, a young woman with kind, persistent eyes, comes to your residential home. She wants to talk to the survivors. That's what they are calling you now. Not penitents, not inmates. Survivors. The word feels strange, powerful. At first, none of you will speak to her. The habit of silence is too deeply ingrained. It is too dangerous to talk. But she keeps coming back. She brings tea and biscuits. She just sits with you, and slowly, one by one, the stories begin to emerge. An elderly woman named Nora is the first to talk. She tells the journalist about her baby being taken from her. You listen, and her story unlocks your own. You find yourself speaking, your voice rusty and hesitant at first, about the gents, about the priest, about your name being taken away, about the endless, aching labor. The words pour out of you, a torrent of memory and pain that has been dammed up for half a century. You are telling your story, and someone is finally listening. This process, of survivors finding their voice, was crucial, spurred by the media attention. Activist groups like Justice for Magdalene were formed. They began to collect testimonies, to lobby the government, to demand recognition and redress. They transformed the issue from a historical tragedy into a contemporary political battle for human rights. The government, at first, is resistant. They try to downplay the state's involvement, framing it as a private, church-run affair. But the evidence, from survivor testimonies and from the state's own archives showing laundry contracts and police involvement, is overwhelming. Here is a specific detail of that political struggle. The Irish government commissioned a report, led by Senator Martin McAleese, to establish the facts of the state's involvement. The report, published in 2013, was a lemma. It pored over archives and confirmed that over 10 Jarrow women were known to have been admitted to the laundries since the foundation of the state, and that the state was deeply complicit through its role as a customer, a regulator, and a police force for the institutions. The historical debate over the report's limitations, for example, it didn't use the word abuse continues, but its factual findings were undeniable and paved the way for a state apology. One day, you are all gathered around the television again. The broadcast is from the Dáil, the Irish Parliament. The Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, Enda Kenny, is standing up to speak, and he does something that you never, in your wildest dreams, thought would happen. He apologizes. He apologizes on behalf of the Irish state. He says the laundries were the nation's shame. He looks directly at the camera, his voice thick with emotion, and he says to the survivors, I, as Taoiseach, on behalf of the state, the government and our citizens, deeply regret and apologize unreservedly to all those women for the hurt that was done to them. In the common room of the nursing home, you and the other women are weeping, but these are not the silent, grieving tears of the past. These are tears of shock, of vindication, of a pain so deep it can only be expressed in sobs. It is not a pardon, it is a declaration of your innocence. The state, the ultimate authority, is finally saying it was not your fault. The apology doesn't give you back your lost life. It doesn't heal the ache in your bones or erase the scars on your soul, but it is something. It is a recognition. It is the truth, spoken aloud in the highest office in the land. The secret has been fully and irrevocably revealed. The state's apology is a monumental event, a crack of thunder that reverberates through the quiet corridors of your residential home and across the entire country. It's a public acknowledgement, a line drawn in the history books. But for you, the aftermath is a quieter, more personal affair. Life doesn't magically transform. The apology doesn't erase the phantom smell of lice, so pour silence the echo of the laundry bell in your memory. What changes is you. A new kind of activism is born, one that you never would have imagined. Survivor groups organize meetings. And for the first time, you travel to a community hall and sit in a room filled with dozens of other Magdalene women. You look around at their faces wrinkled, tired, but resilient, and you see your own story reflected in their eyes. You are not just a small, silent cluster in a nursing home. You are part of a vast, hidden sisterhood. You listen as they speak, their voices, like yours, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. They talk about the babies they lost, the families who betrayed them, the small acts of kindness they remember, the enduring nightmares. Sharing these stories in the light of day, without fear, is a powerful form of healing. The shame, which has been your constant companion for a lifetime, begins to loosen its grip. It was their shame, not yours. You are just a survivor. The government sets up a redress scheme, offering financial compensation to the women for the time they spent in the labor they performed. A solicitor comes to the home to help you and the other women fill out the forms. The paperwork is complicated. You have to prove you were there. You think of the dusty ledger you found, the one with your name in it, Sarah O'Malley. Yours too. Admitted June 12th. The institution's own record keeping has become the key to your compensation. The irony is not lost on you. When the first payment arrives, A check in the mail with an amount of money that is incomprehensible to you. You just stare at it. What do you even do with it? You have no needs. The residential home provides everything. For decades, your labor was valued at nothing. No, the state has put a price on it. It feels both validating and deeply inadequate. How can money ever equal a lost life? This debate over financial redress is a complex and painful one. For many survivors, it was a crucial symbol of the state taking responsibility. It provided financial security for women left destitute by their experience. But for others, it felt like blood money, an attempt to close the book on a national crime without engaging in deeper processes of truth and reconciliation. Historians and human rights advocates still debate whether such schemes truly provide justice, or if they are a form of administrative closure for the state. You decide to do something with the money, something small, something for yourself. You ask one of the younger nurses to take you shopping, not to a supermarket, but to a proper clothing store. You walk through the aisles, touching the soft fabrics. You buy a beautiful woolen coat, the color of a winter sky. You buy a soft cashmere scarf. These are not practical, sensible things. They are beautiful. They are a luxury. They are for you. You also start to build a new kind of family. The other laundry women in the home are your sisters. You watch out for each other. You sit together, sharing memories, or just sitting in a comfortable silence that is no longer enforced, but chosen. You are no longer just a collection of inmates, you are a community of elders. One day, you are walking in the park again, wearing your new coat. You see another group of survivors gathered on a bench. Nothing. It's a soft, gentle sound, but it's laughter. You realize you haven't truly laughed, not a real, deep laugh, since you were a girl at the dance. Here's a small, poignant detail about the aftermath. Many survivor groups have focused on memorialization. They have campaigned for plaques to be placed at the sites of former laundries, for the unmarked graves to be properly consecrated, and for the names of the dead to be read aloud in public ceremonies. This act of naming the nameless, of remembering the forgotten, is a crucial part of the healing process. It is a final act of defiance against the institution's attempt to erase them. You have good days and bad days. On the bad days, a certain smell or a sudden loud noise can send you right back to the steam and fear of the laundry. The trauma is a part of you, a ghost that walks beside you. But on the good days, you can sit in the sun, feel the warmth of your new coat, and watch the world go by. Your story, and the stories of the thousands of other women, have changed Ireland. They have forced a confrontation with a dark past and sparked a wider conversation about the relationship between church and state, about women's rights, and about the nature of institutional abuse. Your stolen life, once a hidden secret, has become a catalyst for national change. You will never get back the years you lost. You will never be that carefree 16-year-old girl again. But in finding your voice, in telling your story, you have reclaimed something profound. You have reclaimed your name. You are not just a number in a ledger, not just a penitent in a grey uniform. You are Sarah, and you are here. Your survival is your victory. The final word is yours. The story is over, but the echoes remain, soft and persistent. The journey you took was through a landscape of sorrow, a quiet corner of history that was hidden for so long. But now, the story has been told, the silence has been broken. Feel the weight of it begin to lift, like a heavy blanket being gently pulled away. The clanging bells of the laundry are fading, replaced by a softer, more distant hum. The chill of the stone walls is receding, and a gentle, quiet warmth begins to settle around you. That the faces and the names, the injustices and the small, brave acts of defiance, all begin to soften and blur. They are dissolving now, becoming part of the vast, flowing river of stories that have been told. They have found their place. The tension in your shoulders can release. The journey is done. You are safe now, far from the steam and the sadness, resting in a quiet, peaceful space. Your own bed, your own room, a place of comfort and stillness. Allow the rhythm of your own breathing to be the only clock you need, each breath drawing you deeper into a place of rest, a place of peace. You are drifting now, floating on a calm, dark sea, towards the gentle shores of sleep. The end of the article. Good night.